Welcome back, everybody, to our last week here on the Samong Outdoors podcast of Mule Deer March. This week, we are with Clayton Vining of Bearded Brother Outdoors. Colton was not able to join us today, but we're talking mule deer, and of those two, Clayton's really the mule deer guy. Like we've said in the past for this month, if you're joining on YouTube, or if you're not joining on YouTube, I should say, it might be a good idea. We've got some 200-inch plus sheds from Washington, a couple $180.
There's a lot of bone in the studio.
There's a lot of bone in the studio.
Yeah.
But before we jump into it, as always, we want to thank the companies that support this podcast and make it possible for us to keep bringing this content to you guys. First off, we want to thank Onyx Hunt. This is the hunting software that Samong and I use, that Clayton uses as well. Just awesome. Most people know what it is, or most people have it, but it shows you your public land boundaries, your private land boundaries, and just something with Onyx that Clayton and I were talking about earlier today. We went on a shed hunt before the podcast, and their LiDAR feature, which has come up multiple times in this Mule Deer month. We were talking about it with Braden Davis. Their LiDAR feature is just an epic update to the platform that shows you just all the little minutia of landscape changes that you might not be able to see on topography, and definitely not on satellite.
Next one we want to thank is Vortex Optics. Folks, spring turkey is the first thing that's happening right after Mule Deer March. So right now, for a lot of you guys living around here, turkey might be on your brain. So if you're looking for your turkey gear, one of the things I recommend is the new Shotgun Red Dot, the Viper series from Vortex. It's a red dot that goes straight to the receiver of your shotgun, so you don't have to use a Picatinny rail, which when you use a Picatinny rail and then you put a red dot on top, what it does is it messes with your cheek rest, meaning you have to really elevate your head to be able to see through the red dot. But with this new Viper Shotgun Red Dot, because it's basically straight on the barrel of your shotgun, it's essentially like looking down your bead, but you're looking at a red dot. And in fact, for those of you who might suffer with like astigmatism or something, they have a green dot feature now too. So you could choose a red dot or a green dot, depending on your personal preference. If you shop at eurooptic.com, you can use code SY10 to save on all Vortex products.
Third, we want to thank Tacticam, specifically the Reveal series of cameras. These are the cell cameras that we use. I set one up earlier today, or I should say reset one up, because we had a crazy windstorm that came through and blew down my trail cam tree. But just great products. Really cornerstone, especially kind of talking about mule deer this month. A lot of mule deer is in the preparation, and same thing with whitetail hunting, and honestly a lot of hunting in general. The more preparation you do, the higher your chances of success are. And Tacticam Reveal cameras are one of those things that allow us to kind of get in some more groundwork prior to season, especially if you're not able to be out there changing batteries and changing SD cards, every month or every couple weeks, depending on the activity in the area.
Lastly, we want to thank Argali Outdoors. These are our tents and sleeping bags of choice. If you're looking for one sleeping bag to do it for the rest of your life, look no further than the Argali Alpine sleeping bags. They have a 0 degree and a 20 degree. And the reason why we appreciate the Argali Alpine sleeping bags is because they are actually comfortable to the rating degree that they are rated at. So if you get a 0 degree Alpine sleeping bag, you are comfortable down to 0 degrees. It's not one of those marketing gimmicks that you see across the sleeping bag market where when they say it's a 20 degree sleeping bag, what they actually mean is you're comfortable up to 50 degrees, and then 20 degrees is you're barely surviving. So that's why we like our Argali product. When they say something, they don't have this false idea of marketing to you by making their numbers inflated. It's just like, this is what we market as, and this is what's true with it. That's why we recommend them. And plus, Brad's a super cool dude. If you ever have any problems with him, he will take care of you.
Well, should we jump into Trivia Duel?
Clayton, do you have a Trivia Duel for us?
Ruber told me that you do.
Yeah. No way. All right. Well, as always, what we typically like to do is when we have a guest and they have one, we let them go first.
Okay. Yeah, so I actually got this one off from Mississippi State University. What is the name of the process in which the body uses minerals from skeletal sites, like rib bones, to be used in the production of antlers?
Oh, Nate, you should know this one, right?
So I've got multiple choice here. So
Okay.
it's A, adduction, B, osmosis, C, mobilization, or D, homeostasis.
So, osmosis, homeostasis, mobilization, or adduction.
Mm-hmm.
Nate's brain is turning because Nate's a nurse, for those of you who don't know, so he's a lot more involved with learning about stuff like this.
Don't put me up on too much of a pedestal.
Well,
I'll probably get it wrong.
You're on a higher pedestal than I am, because all those words to me, it's like learning a new language. I'm gonna be honest. I
was pretty impressed you could just name those 4 off again right after I
know.
just said them.
Every time he said one, it went through one ear and out the other ear. I'm like, I don't know what my options are. I honestly don't know. Osmosis, I will say, if I remember to like 10th grade biology, osmosis has to do with water, but I don't necessarily know what water would have to do with. I mean, yes, water is very important when it comes to growing antlers. That's why you always hear people talking about moisture year, good moisture year, bad moisture year, and we've been talking about this year. I just don't know if that's necessarily the procedure of growing an antler. So I'm going to have to cross that one off. So I have a 1 in 3 guess, or maybe I crossed off the right answer. I'm an idiot. I don't know. I'm going to go with adduction because I've never heard of it before.
So here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking I can cross off homeostasis in my mind, because homeostasis is kind of the process that the body maintains this steady environment as far as your pH, temperature, all these things go. I'm going to cross off adduction in my mind because that's just a movement usually of muscles that contract and move things towards the body. Usually, like if you're bringing your arms towards the core of you or your legs towards your center, that's adduction. Osmosis and mobilization, I'm kind of going back and forth. So yes, osmosis is like the movement of larger molecules to smaller. It's like can be a pressure gradient thing, and with that, a lot of times electrolytes move, like sodium. However, I don't know the size of calcium, which is, I'm assuming this has to do with the movement of calcium, since that is what bone is made out of. So I've never heard of osmosis in that term, so I'm going to go with mobilization as my final answer.
Well, you are correct.
Yes.
What a nerd, bro. I already knew it. See, I called it, folks. I was like, this guy should know it by just, process of elimination.
So yeah, mobilization is the process in which the body uses the minerals from different bones within the body to be used in the production of antlers. And then those minerals and vitamins are later replenished in the body through, like in this case, the deer's diet.
You know that's really interesting, because I've never thought of the mineral, because you think of like deer, let's say, or elk, the growing antlers, or moose, I guess, ungulates growing antlers. I always think of them taking in a lot of minerals and nutrients during the spring, and I think of that going straight to antler growth, like straight through digestive tract to antler growth, not to like nourishing their bodies while they mobilize nutrients from the rest of their body to antler. It's not a direct pathway from nutrients to antlers. It's a direct pathway, like it goes nutrients to body to like skeletal bone growth, and they mobilize to antlers. That's super cool.
That is really cool. I mean, I learned something. I did not know that.
I've never thought about that.
I have a fast fact that will add on to velvet antlers
This
later.
makes a lot more sense, though, about why a harsh winter can impact antler growth as well, because if they're going more malnourished into the springtime, they probably have more ground to make up to get back to their baseline before they can start working on growing big antlers. Whereas if they have an easy winter, which will maybe...
Man,
I don't know.
What a nerd,
It
man.
makes you think about this spring, this coming year, because we've had so much speculation of like with how dry it's been.
But it's also been mild.
But it's also been a mild winter.
Yeah.
So it'll make it very interesting.
Well, it's like we were talking with Brock earlier that last winter it was fairly similar down like in the lowlands compared to how this winter's been, where we had hardly any snow. But if you went up very high, there was a lot of snow. Whereas this winter, there's no snow hardly anywhere. But that made me think last year that we'd have pretty decent antler growth, especially up kind of in some of the higher elevations with all that available moisture and all the available forage for the deer. And I know both Brock and I had bucks that we'd been watching that were smaller last year than they'd been the previous year.
Yeah.
So it's really
curious.
weird.
That's interesting.
It just makes you realize how many factors play into, especially kind of here in our talk, what we'll talk about with sheds and stuff like that, like how difficult it is to tell just off of a shed, like deer size, deer age, what that antler looked like on that deer prior years. If you don't know the deer or don't have pictures of him, like it can change.
Oh, yeah.
It is not a linear curve as a deer gets older, of bigger and bigger and bigger until they, get old and regress. They
Wow.
have big years and little years. And Anyways,
I'm going to start using that to justify me shooting a little deer.
it was a 180 last year.
It was a bad growth year.
That's what Clayton and Brock and I were joking about earlier. Is that some of these smaller antlers like, oh, it was a 160
big
last
buck
year.
last
Don't worry.
That's a great trivia duel, Clayton. You should be proud of yourself on that one. I learned about that. Mobilization.
Mobilization.
Well, I'll have a little fast fact that adds up to kind of like velvet, but that's for the end of the podcast. I'll go next. So this one, because we're talking about mule deer, I'm assuming we're pretty familiar with mule deer, all three of us. We're probably just as familiar with white-tailed deer because here in Northeast Washington, we have both. So here's something that I feel like you guys have a pretty decent shot at getting, all right? Here's my trivia duel for the week. Mule deer and white-tailed deer have the same types of scent glands, such as the metatarsal, the tarsal, preorbital, and interdigital. There are more, but those are the 4 options I'm going to talk about. However, the differences of the scent glands between the 2 deer species are size, location, and function. Physically speaking, what 2 scent glands differ the most between a mule deer and a white-tailed deer? And again, here are your 4 options that we're comparing. Metatarsal, tarsal, preorbital, and the interdigital. So, just for those of you who don't know, the interdigital is the gland that is between the hooves of the deer. The preorbital is that gland that's like right in their tear duct, right in front of their eyes. The tarsal is that gland that's on their like joint, their hock, and then the metatarsal is that gland that's on like the lower hind leg of their back legs.
Okay.
So, which one of those between the 2 deer species differ the most?
Okay, if I take a stab.
And again, I'm talking about physically.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with, and I have no idea. This is pure speculation. I'm gonna say preorbital, and I think my line of thinking here is maybe more geared towards the forehead gland on deer. But the first thing I think of in relation to scent between the 2 deer is how heavily white-tailed deer use scrapes and rubs to spread their forehead gland, and how much of a discussion it is, especially among deer hunters, about using forehead gland. You can use forehead gland scent and all these things, to find rubs, and deer use these as community. And I don't know how much mule deer do that. Well, I do know that during the rut, like they get the dark, really smelly tarsal. I'm not sure about interdigital or metatarsal glands, but I'm going to go with preorbital, saying that they're smaller probably and less significant on a mule deer than on a whitetail.
Okay.
So is it how they're used differently?
No, just physically, like size-wise.
Oh, okay. In that case, I'd probably say like tarsal, because I feel like on a mule deer, the tarsal gland's going to be bigger.
Tarsal or metatarsal?
Tarsal.
Okay. Tarsal and preorbital. Final answers? All right. So the metatarsal is actually the gland that differs the most between a whitetail and a mule deer. So on mule deer, the metatarsal, and you guys have seen this probably if you've ever killed one, they're about 4 to 6 inches long. Like there's just like a big buff of fur on their hind leg. With white-tailed deer, it's less than an inch. So that is the biggest, physically speaking, difference between the glands of a mule deer and a white-tailed deer. The tarsal on both are pretty similar in size. Obviously, mule deer just simply being bigger, it's going to be relative to that size of a mule deer. But in generally speaking, like it's not that much of a difference.
Gotcha. The
preorbital and the interdigital, they're practically the same. But the biggest one, physically speaking, is if you ever killed it, like especially as you approach the rut. If you've ever killed a mule deer that's just rutting and a whitetail that's just rutting, you will see that flared hair, a piece on their hind leg, is drastically bigger on a mule deer than, say, a white-tailed deer.
Very interesting.
Yeah, there you go.
Huh. Okay, so everybody knows that a really important part of wildlife conservation, wildlife study, hunting, everything from biologists is accurate wildlife survey. And this is actually another discussion we were having earlier about accurately surveying deer, especially in really densely wooded areas. But there's multiple ways that biologists will survey deer populations. They will use aerial coverage. They will have on-ground coverage. This question is specifically, how do they look at and survey fawn calving rates, fawn death rates, and just most of the population changes that happen around that fawning time with fresh dropped fawns? What method do they use to survey those?
Is this a specific game department?
No, this is just a method in general.
Okay.
Like aerial, like drone survey or airplane survey or
Yeah.
ground survey or a different type of survey.
Are you asking for the most effective?
No, I'm just asking for one that they use specifically related to calving
Oh.
or fawning in the spring.
And that's just to.
And
that's
this is a method that they use to get accurate data on fawns very close to birth time.
I'm asking to make sure I'm understanding your question. So, are you asking about just to see when the calves are being born, or are you talking about like survival rates within the calves?
I'm talking more about when the calves are being born.
Okay.
And then I'll go over some of the other statistics, but it has to do with statistics around calves and fawns in the spring that happen right when the calves are born.
So you're just looking for like a method of how they actually survey
How do
that.
they actually do that?
Okay.
You want to go first? I have one, but I need to brainstorm my words so I can speak it properly.
So I guess the first thing comes to my mind is I've listened to these research studies where they actually implant this monitoring device inside of the pregnant female. And then at the time that she gives birth, I can't remember how it works, but at the time that she gives birth, maybe it's got something to do with like the heart rate of the animal. It alerts that sensor to where it, like the biologist sitting in their office get an email or like a notification from this sensor that that female cow, elk, or deer has now given birth to their fawn or calf.
Mine is very similar, but mine's a little bit different. So I do believe that they implant the female cow, elk, or the deer, whatever, with a device. And I believe that device, again, this is me guessing, it has a GPS tracker on it. So when the animal, the cow, elk, is walking around, that GPS is always moving. But while she's giving birth, that GPS or device falls out with the calf. And then when that calf falls, the calf doesn't go very far. The calf is usually pretty dormant for the first 2 weeks of life. And because they can track this thing on a map, when they see that that GPS signal is no longer actively moving, they say, all right, there's a calf that's born. We need to go and collar that calf. I don't know if I did a good job explaining that, but that's my best guess.
Yeah, so you guys nailed it, both of you basically. It is more on the GPS side. So these are called VITs, or vaginal implant transmitters. And for those of you that might know what an IUD looks like for female birth control, it basically looks like that. It's like a T-shaped, it's got a stem with a T-shaped, and it gets inserted into the vagina, the vaginal canal of the doe or of the cow elk, and exactly what you said. So I think it's based off of a movement of that device, because they also monitor when these get accidentally dislodged or come dislodged prior to calving because they stop or fawning. But that's exactly what they are, and that's how they monitor them. Some of the really cool statistics that they can get from these fawns or calves directly after, and this is specifically to mule deer fawns, some of the really cool statistics that they can get is average length of labor for mule deer does, which is 121 minutes, which means they enter from the beginning of labor to the fawning is just over 2 hours on average.
Jeez.
Which,
that's a long time.
oh, to me that seemed like a very short time. Like knowing that the average adult, like human, is a lot of times anywhere from like 6 to like.
Are you talking? Okay, you're talking about like
48.
literally from like first signs.
From first signs, yeah, which would be like
that's a little bit different.
From first contractions. I would assume is what they're talking about, or from rupture of membranes, like from the water breaking. So they can look at length of labor. The average time that the fawn began standing after birth is only 35 minutes, and then the average time that the fawns began nursing after birth was 43 minutes. Lastly, I think this just blew my mind, of the ones that they were able to track, the average fawn in the first 24 hours after birth moved 0.6 of a kilometer from their birth site.
Oh, wow.
Which means within 24 hours, they were walking not an insignificant amount of distance, which is just crazy. That's so cool to me.
That might be our longest Trivia Duel segment of all time. But that was honestly one of the most like factual and informational Trivia Duel we've had.
That's cool.
Yeah, that was cool. I enjoyed that. That was really good. I mean, I don't know what you guys have for fast facts, but my fast fact is kind of a continuation of where we just left off on Trivia Duel. But we'll leave that for last. Well, Clayton, welcome back to the studio.
Thanks for having me.
You guys meaning you and Colin, but obviously he's not here today. But last time we talked about elk and we talked about cougar. This time we're shifting gears, talking about mule deer, which I know is something you hold very close to your heart.
Yeah.
And that's why we like you, and that's why we invited you over. But obviously, folks, as Nate talked about earlier, like we have some of Clayton's very own bone in this studio. So bucks you've taken, a lot of sheds. You're a very avid shed hunter.
Yeah.
And I would feel like it's not necessarily wrong to say that you are very successful in the hunting woods because you spend a lot of time actually picking up sheds of potential prospects that you want to go after. But with that said, just for those who might not necessarily know you, just a quick background of where you're from and whatnot.
Yeah, no, just born and raised in Northeast Washington, lived here my whole life. Kind of as you guys mentioned earlier, we got a pretty healthy, good mix of whitetail and mule deer. So I've really spent the majority of my life growing up whitetail hunting. I've got a passion for whitetails, big mountain whitetails. You gotta love them, but
They come second.
yeah. The last several years now, I've really grown my passion for mule deer and just scouting for them and setting cameras and shed hunting for them. And, I've kind of pushed whitetails off to the side now. And I'm like, man, all I can think about are these big old mountain muleys
And
now.
just like the rest of our guests, I mean, you're pretty much Washington based. So I think all these right here are Washington bucks.
That's actually an Oregon buck.
Oregon buck.
Yep.
I remember that one. But the rest, a lot of your sheds you find are just Northeast Washington.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
you're an anomaly because you do get to do a lot of quality deer tags. But for the most part, you're a general season public land guy. Like you go out there on
Yeah.
the tag where you can get every single year, and so you're doing what everybody else can do.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing we wanted to highlight because you can't really be relatable to the people if all you do is hunt these limited entry or quality tags, right?
Right.
Which is why we picked out the guys that we wanted.
Yeah.
Like the people who are just kind of like us, where you get out when you can.
And in relation, just in that, if you guys are watching, like this Oregon was a archery tag,
Yep.
and so most Oregon archery tags are fairly easy draw, like first to second year draw for most of Oregon archery. But otherwise, we're not talking about even shed hunting in quality units. We're talking about shed hunting in general season
Yep.
units, correct?
Yeah.
Maybe units that have quality seasons, but not units that are shut down for general season hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much all these units up here. There's really no.
There's a general season.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just your normal general. Like I said, over the last few years, been gaining a lot of knowledge about mule deer. And
So what was it that made you take the turn to mule deer and then kind of pivot? Because from what I know, guys that are into whitetail are really into whitetail, and guys that are into mule deer are really into mule deer. And you don't often hear of them making the jump from like the tree stand saddle hunting type thing over to chasing somewhat, as they say, unpatternable deer or, very different style of hunting, completely different animal in general.
yeah, I feel like most people, when you think of like the West, you picture either like a big bull elk or a big mule deer. And I think it's primarily just, and not that some of these mountain whitetails, man, you can get up high in some of these mountains and in some pretty incredible places. But a lot of these places where you're hunting these mule deer are just incredible. And to be able to go and hunt them in those places is, I think, just amazing. And like I said, I'll still always love whitetails too, but
Was it shed hunting? Like, was it starting to find? Because you're another one of the guys that's a 9-to-5 job guy. You work during the week. You don't do hunting full time or social media or any of that. But you have a job that keeps you outside quite a bit. Was it stumbling or like during your shed hunting time or work time, stumbling across mule deer sheds where you kind of started to turn over to this, or did you really start picking up some of these mule deer sheds once you really started zoning in on and trying to like dedicate time and effort to them?
On and off, I'd find some mule deer horns and stuff. But I started getting to some of these areas that seemed to be a little more mule deer. Come to find out, I didn't realize that at the time. But as I started hitting some of these areas, you could start to tell that they were more mule deer winter ranges than whitetails. But I would say that definitely played probably a significant part, starting to find some big mule deer sheds. I'm like, oh man.
You were really just whitetail hunting and you just stumbled upon mule deer country. Like, I should make this jump.
Yeah. I will say another part of that is these whitetails and the mule deer mixed together.
There's an overlap.
And so over the years, I've had a lot of cameras I put out for whitetails that I've had some pretty impressive mule deer come in on, and I'm like, oh man, like.
And so that's a distinction I want to make. Is a lot of people think in other Western states you have whitetail that are like river bottom, valley bottom, up to maybe
foothills.
a couple thousand feet foothills, and then you have the mule deer up in the 6, 7, 8, 10,000 foot mountains. But we don't have that distinction in Northeast Washington as much. There's a
No.
lot more overlap, right?
Yeah, our whitetails here, though, you can almost find them anywhere. A lot of times that the mule deer are going to be.
Almost
and vice
anywhere,
versa.
any time.
Which is something that, people talk about, I don't see a lot of mule deer country in Northeast Washington, just like if you look at Onyx, right? If you turn on any sort of elevation band layer in Northeast Washington, you're pretty much out of luck unless you see like some of these high peaks up in the Salmo Priest or somewhere else like that where you get some peaks up in like the 6,000, 7,000 foot range. But otherwise, it's a very mixed habitat. With it being that overlapping habitat, what in your mind kind of gives you that distinction when you feel like, I'm kind of crossing over into the mule deer region here?
Definitely, I mean, getting into higher elevations, your chances are more likely to run into mule deer than whitetail. I can think of a camera I had out last year, roughly probably about 5,800 feet in elevation. And it's primarily dominated by mule deer, but I do get whitetails going by on that camera.
At 5,800.
Yeah.
That's
really
high
high.
for a whitetail.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of it, because like one of the things you will notice like in like the true 10,000 feet difference of like, let's say Montana, is the habitat way down low and the habitat way up top are drastically different, right? But here where we live, it's like you can have a mountain peak that's like 6,000 feet high and a little foothill that's 3,000 feet high. But when you look at it from a habitat perspective, there's really not anything different other than that one's high and one's low. So what they need down low, they can probably still get up high. It's just that one's way higher and one's much lower. But if you go to like a true high country, alpine basin, the feed up there is way different than like a river bottom, agriculture sometimes.
The vegetation type's probably going to vary too, like even between like 3,000 and 6,000. But with the whitetails, it seems they're more predominantly in the areas that you've got thicker timber. And you'll find the mule deer in there too, but the whitetails, it seems like they tend to stay in that heavy cover. Whereas if you get up in some of these mountains where you've got some openings and timber pockets, broken up country, then the mule deer seem to kind of like that.
Because I noticed that in Montana when I did it 2 years ago, and I wasn't even that high. Like you drive on the highway, which is basically you're at the bottom, and there's like whitetails are crossing the road left and right. And I only drove like another 2,000 feet of elevation, and there were no whitetails. It was all mule deer. But the biggest thing was the elevation wasn't drastic, but the habitat that I was hunting was completely different. Because when we were seeing the mule deer, it was not this coniferous forest where it's just thick. It was just this little open face where it was really rocky. There was a lot of ceanothus or whatever that plant's called. And it just looked very sagey in a way, but there was no sage. It just looked open. And all the mule deer loved it.
Yeah.
But then there was not a single whitetail, even though this was only like 3,800 feet high. I mean, that's pretty whitetail habitat, if you ask me. If you just looked at it from an elevation perspective, a lot of the whitetail we hunt are like 4,000 feet. And so that's why, to me, I was like, okay, you're in elevation wise, like whitetail country, but there was not a single whitetail in sight.
Yeah.
It was all mule deer. So I guess to your point, it's like your habitat does matter. So it's like, it's not just look for deer or certain species at this elevation. It's like there has to be other aspects that kind of fit into why that deer wants to be there.
I think also too that's one of the more unique things that mule deer country in Northeast Washington has to offer. And we were talking with Brock about this, is that a lot of areas like Montana, Wyoming, a lot of the other western states where these mule deer are in these higher elevations, it's just because the mountains are so much bigger that you get very weather-dependent hunting seasons. Like, you can get a big snow that may not necessarily push the deer start downing into their winter range, but it may make access extremely difficult or impossible unless you got tracks or something, special. Whereas in Washington, there's not such a drastic elevation change in a lot of this part of the state. You still have a lot of elevation. I mean, you can have stuff go from, river bottom down, at 600, 800 feet up to maybe 5,000 or 6,000 feet. But a lot of times you have both whitetail, but in what we're talking about here, mule deer, kind of in their home range for a lot of the year, especially through hunting season. And their winter ranges aren't going to be like thousands and thousands of feet down the mountain in these valley bottoms. They're going to some amount, kind of be in some of the same areas. have less of this big they're more of these resident deers than these big migration herds that, a lot of people talk about migration hunts and everything is in the context of migration, but that's not necessarily always the case here, right?
No. And that's one of the things I find so intriguing about these mule deer we have is they seem to vary so much deer to deer almost that, like out shed hunting all the time. I've got spots down at 2,000 feet that I'll go in and find a bunch of mule deer sheds. But I know general hunting season, you could probably go in there and you might see a few mule deer, but there's not many in there. But in the winter, these mule deer are coming down and that's where they're wintering. But at the same time, I've got other spots that I hunt. I'm not normally shed hunting up there, but I just hunt at 6,000 feet that I find mule deer sheds. I kind of usually say I think most of the mule deer drop anywhere from late January through February.
Drop meaning sheds or
drop their sheds.
Sheds.
And I'm just thinking, can you imagine how much snow was up there at 6,000 feet?
Yeah,
especially some
time?
winters.
Yeah,
not much this year, but
no, this year
some winters, a lot.
Like we were just saying, last winter up high there was a lot of snow, and this one particular spot I was hunting, which is right up at 6,000 feet. When I was hunting up there this year, I found a set of sheds, a pretty nice 4-point, that was from this last winter when there was a lot of snow up high. And so it's just like, what was that deer doing up there? But
and for your guys' context, in Washington, a lot of the highway passes are not even that high. Like you talk about Snoqualmie Pass, Sherman Pass, Blewett Pass.
Well, Sherman's the highest, and it's like 55 something.
I think, it's 5490 or 55 something. So, yeah, we're talking about one of the highest passes in Washington. In winter, if you ever drive up there in January, a lot of time, I mean,
you better have some chains.
Yeah, there's a lot of snow, so it's crazy. It's very, very diverse mule deer.
Do you think that has, so in your context that you're talking about that story where you found those sheds way up high, do you think that deer was actually up there the whole winter, or do you think he was actually way down low, but as the snow started to melt, he just worked his way up and then he eventually shedded up there?
I think they stay up there.
They just don't move.
Yeah, because I've got cameras up there, and throughout the winter I'll get pictures occasionally of deer. And I think what it is there's timber pockets, and they kind of bounce from timber pocket to timber pocket, and they're just staying up there. I don't know why they do that, but
they just,
and probably finding much areas.
And those aren't the only sheds I found up there. I found others than that too.
So it's not a one-off thing. It's like they literally live up there year round. That's insane, because what do they even eat?
Assuming probably like the old man's beard, moss, a lot of that out of the trees.
Lichen.
And then there's I'm sure they're eating some of the shrubbery and stuff that's poking out through the snow, but yeah, they're getting a lot of that.
Wow, that's insane. So with that said, like you kind of put your like scouting and their wintering range in between, right? So like you do your shed hunting in the spring, and then you look at their wintering range in the winter. So how do you find that balance between that and hunting season? Because what are the deer doing between wintering and like shedding? Like how do you hone in on saying, I'm going to hunt this spot for mule deer, knowing that this is where they shed, this is where they winter, this is where they probably move, or where they don't move?
Well, see, that's probably the hardest part, is because like say you're out hiking and you find a nice shed, then you got to think, well, does this deer live here and he shed here? Or did he move 10 miles and winters here? And yeah, so that's the big question. But like I said, the lower elevation stuff, I've just found, like I said, you can go in there and you probably bump some does and maybe some small bucks or something. But if you're finding those horns kind of in that mid elevation, maybe up around like 4,000, around 4,000 feet seems to be a pretty good elevation, or higher, there's probably a chance that buck might not be too far away from where he dropped that antler.
What's your take on the home range of these mule deer? Like if you gave them a size.
Well, I get this primarily from stuff I've listened to.
At least the core home range, right? Because obviously the winter range can be so wide, because some winters are so bad it forces them out of where they normally would spend. But like, if you had to put a number on like mile radius of like, this is the core home range of a mule deer, like what would you estimate?
I usually think anywhere from like a square mile to a
square
small. Mile to a mile and a half.
That's tiny. And when you think of it from a context of a mountain range, like a square mile is not very big.
One thing I'll say about that too is that's not like, if you were to think just of a square mile.
It's a random little jaunt.
I mean, it might be one huge ridge that's only a couple hundred yards wide, but runs for a long ways, and maybe that buck's just living on that ridgetop, but just cruising it back and forth.
Yeah, and this reflects kind of what we were talking about earlier in the month with, I believe it was Brock talking about a lot of times seeing these deer in their summer ranges, or what people think, oh, they have their summer ranges where they're out feeding in velvet, and they shed their velvet, and then they're gone and off to bigger and better places that are very hard to find during hunting season.
Mm-hmm.
And he approaches a lot of his hunting with the idea of, no, they're still here. They're just not right there out in the open. I'm going to stay here where I was seeing them in the summer and still hunt them, whether that's glassing or still hunting or some different tactic to try to get in on them in those similar ranges, which, like I said earlier, I think is a pretty unique thing to Washington a lot of the times because of our Northeast Washington, because of our elevation.
So with that said, it's like, so you and Brock, I just learned this before the podcast started. You guys share a lot of overlap hunting grounds, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And when we had our podcast with Brock is pretty much in the timber. Like, that's how he hunts the mule deer. I mean, he'll glass from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you operate under that same idea of hunting these, I guess I'll call it this specific herd of mule deer, is you spend a lot more time still hunting the timber, or do you try to find them in a spot where you can glass?
This is a good segue here, Clayton.
Yeah. So I'll kind of refer to this last season as one that almost broke me, but a really good kind of season of learning.
It sounds like you want to tell us a story.
Yeah, we can hop into that. We've had this spot that we set up. Colton and I, we set that up probably almost 8-10 years ago. But back when you could still use minerals and that type of stuff. But it was actually a spot where we were just driving one day. It was archery deer season, and we were just cruising around and happened to spot a bachelor group of bucks up on the ridge above us, and there was a really nice buck in there too.
Mule deer.
Yep, all muleys. And we put a stock in on them, and we just didn't get quite close. But where we had initially seen these bucks was this really nice bench. And I guess back at that time, I just wouldn't even really think of it that way. But now looking at it, I think this bench, even though there's some like small timber pockets on it, I think those deer, they're only just using this bench to move back and forth from one side of the mountain to the other. You know, maybe some of the does and the fawns are bedding on this actual bench in some of those small pockets. But so anyways, we set a camera up and some stuff in there, and we've just had kept it going throughout the years. And starting in 2023, we had this buck show up that was just a straight, typical 4-point, no eye guards, but a real stud buck. And he wasn't one that we'd had on camera before that I could recollect or like go back at old pictures and look and recognize him. And hunted him a little bit that year, probably not near as much as I should have. And then the next year he was back. So this is now 24, and was same thing, just straight typical 4-point, no eye guards, tons of mass, probably 30 inches wide, good forks.
How much bigger was he in 2024 compared to 23?
I wouldn't say he'd grown a lot. His frame was maybe just a hair bigger, but more mass.
So pretty much like peak of his life.
Yeah, and I mean, you could tell looking at him. I mean, it's a mature deer. He's got a big body. Anyways, so, and this is kind of one of my lessons learned, or my regrets, I guess, is so the 24 season is also when I drew a quality tag for Washington.
Wow, what a terrible problem, bro.
Yeah.
Terrible problem.
You know, I'm sure you guys have heard the saying, hindsight's always 20/20. You know, it's always easy to look back on stuff and think of how you would have changed it.
I can just tell right now, it's eating you alive.
Yeah. So here I've got this just awesome, incredible buck on camera in a general unit, but now I've got this quality tag, which I think I had been applying for 17. I had 17 points when I drew that.
So that quality tag, like, you really wanted that tag.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I wouldn't say it's like a top unit in the state, but it's a good one.
But you wanted it though. Okay.
And so then I got to thinking, well, I've waited 17 years. I drew this quality tag. Who knows what I could find on that tag, what quality of deer. Should I return my tag and get my points back and hunt this deer? Although, like, to me, this deer is a ghost. Like, I don't ever get daylight pictures of him. It's just nighttime. Should I try to hunt him and maybe if I can, because I think if you draw a quality tag or a tag, I think it's like you got like 2 weeks before your season starts that you can turn your tag back in for points. So I was like, should I try to hunt him? And maybe if I get lucky enough to get him, I could submit my tag back.
And with this year, that's 2024. Did you have a rifle or archery, or you have multi-season?
I think I had a multi-season tag that year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was your quality tag for?
Rifle.
Rifle.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's a November, like a November rut hunt.
So you're telling me you could have hunted this general buck?
Okay. I totally forgot about this. I'm going to take this back. I had drawn the tag with a friend. So we were as a group. So as far as I'm aware, if you want to turn your tag back in, both your party has to return the tag to get your points back.
I see.
So I'm like, well, I'm not going to ask my buddy to turn his tag back in to get my points. And so I was like, well, maybe I could hunt him. And if I remember correctly now, I don't think I ever even went and hunted for him. I just thought, well, I'm gonna save all I got for that quality tag. Ended up going and hunting that tag pretty hard.
The quality tag.
Yeah, and got a pretty nice buck. I got him with like 2 days left in the season, and it wasn't quite the deer I'd had you pictured in your mind before you go on that type of stuff, but it was a nice buck.
It was a nice like inline 5x5 mid 170s type deer.
Casual.
Yeah, he's a 170-inch deer.
Casual.
Got like no width, no width at all, but really good forks. Matching inlines on each side, good eye guards. Yeah, he's cool.
So you filled your 24 tag on that quality tag.
Yep.
Okay.
But then, the whole time, I'm like, man, should I have been hunting that deer back home?
Why? Because the general buck is bigger?
Yeah, I'd rather taken him. And that's the other thing. A lot of times, I mean, like here, I've already got 2 years of history with this deer. Like, what are the odds I'm going to have a third? And so going into the 25 season, now we could no longer bait, but I've been adding this mineral to the earth for years. And so I'm like, well, they're still going to hit it. So I still had a camera on it. And then I went through, and like I said, there's just pockets of timber around. You can go through there, and there's heavily used game trails. I think I found like even a spring that I ended up setting a camera on. That one didn't really pan out that well, but like set cameras like on all these trails I could find, just trying to see if he was back or find another buck. And sure enough, he's back. And it's so funny because I remember me and Colton were somewhere, and this is in like May. So,
of 25.
Yeah. The bucks they're
growing,
kind of just starting to grow. And we were somewhere, I can't remember where we were at, but it was Colton and I, and we're driving, and we got a notification from the trail camera, and Tacticam, shout out to them. And Colton looks at it, and I think I was driving, and he's like, Clayton. I was like, what? He's like, it's him. And he shows it to me, and like I said, he never had eye guards, and it's just these like thick like knobs coming straight out of his head.
He's just a spike.
You sent me this photo, and they are just like horizontal, like almost a perfectly flat line, just headed out towards the tip of the ears and show no signs of curving up.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And then, I mean, you could look at his face too, and his body. I mean, any of the other deer around there, I mean, he dwarfed them, like his body size, the gut on him, and then like his face just looked old. It looks like he's got scars and stuff on his face.
I'm going to hold you back. So you were in 2025, but in the fall of 2024, did you guys have photos of him during hunting season at all? Or is he just gone?
No, we had photos of him.
So he was still there throughout 2024?
Yep.
You just never even made an effort to go hunt him?
Yeah, just because of that quality tag.
Okay, anyway, back to 2025.
So now we go through all summer, He's on the camera maybe, I'd say maybe on average once every 2 weeks, something like that. He'd hit one of the cameras.
And the cameras, are you talking about the cameras where it's like he's walking, or he's hitting those old bait sites that you used to have?
Primarily the old mineral sites.
So he's still trying to come in and like kick up salt,
they'd
whatever?
come and kind of paw at it and stuff. But I did notice, like, because even last year, or I guess in 24, I would have added more mineral there. And so, like, just by not even adding more mineral in 25, they just wouldn't spend near as much time at the site. They'd paw around for a couple minutes and then take off. Whereas before, sometimes they'd be there for quite a while. But anyway, yeah, watch them growing through the summer. I think I kind of mentioned earlier that, like, Brock had said it in his podcast as well, as like some of the deer we'd been watching this last summer, were smaller than the year before. And so he went from a really nice, big, wide, typical 4x4. He shrunk down a little bit. He was still a good 4-point on one side, but then just a big 3 on the one.
So he lost a point.
Yeah, a whole point.
That's crazy. Huh.
Yeah.
So to put in perspective, in 2024, we had a better growth year in 2025.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like, I guess if it hadn't been for that and like some of the other deer and then like talking to Brock and some other people, I might have just thrown that off as like, he's getting so old now and he's like regressed a little bit. But then to hear other people saying like, oh man, we've got these bucks we've been watching for years and they're way smaller this year. And it was like, this is kind of weird. But we get to September, archery season starts. I got the multi-season tag. I started off, I had an archery mule deer hunt down in Oregon. Went down and did that for a few days.
Which is this one right behind us?
Yep. Got that buck. And then come back and roll right into archery elk season. So I'm not going to skip archery elk season.
Which you're a mule deer guy.
Yeah.
But you still always make time for the archery elk in Washington.
My plan was, which I'll blame this on Colton because he's getting too picky, I think. But my plan was I actually ended up buying a muzzleloader tag for elk this year. And so I thought, we'll go out and I'll call something in for Colton and he can shoot it and we'll be done. And then I can go hunt mule deer. Well, yeah, that didn't work. We called in some small bulls that Colton passed up on. And we did, I think it was the second day of season we got in on a really nice bull. But it was just, that's a whole nother story, but it was a weird year for elk. Anyways, archery elk season ends.
So you're like late, middle September.
Yeah, it's probably around like the 20th.
Yep.
And it'd been pretty warm and hot. And we had a big storm roll through, dumped a bunch of rain, and it cooled way off. And I'm at work. It's during the week. I'm at work in the morning. It's like 7:30 in the morning, broad daylight, and I get a picture from one of my truck cameras, and it's this buck walking by. And I'm like, up to this point, I had never, ever during any of the hunting seasons had a daylight photo of him. And here he is walking by in daylight. And like I said, it's already 7:30, so it's been daylight for a while. And so I start kind of, my brain starts to work, and I'm like, man, he can't be going that far, and he's going to bed down for the day. And he's kind of right on top of this ridge. So I was like, I think I know where he's going to bed. And then I was like, the direction, because I got a picture of where he was going when he left, where the trail camera was at. I was like, if he keeps working that way, I know in the past when we've hunted up there, the deer seem to kind of just follow that ridge, and there's this point. There's this weird little point in that ridge that we've ran into deer, bumped into deer on that ridge. And I'm like, getting all my work done, and I'm going to run up there tonight, and I'm going to run up and get in that point and just try to ambush style hunt him and see if he comes to me.
I mean, is that point, is there a patch of trees or just an open point?
Yeah, there's a few trees right on.
Like if they're bedding there, are they just bedding in the open or are they bedding under a
tree? No,
tree?
so I think he was bedding just down the ridge where there was a pocket of timber.
Okay.
And then as they work out that ridge, I don't know if it's like a security thing, like they kind of like to get up on that point, because then that ridge, like the way I would have been walking in from, it kind of drops down. And so I don't know if they like to get up on that point and then just kind of see, where they have a good vantage. I remember this has been quite a few years ago, but we were hunting up there and we were walking in that ridge and we got almost to that point and look up and here's this pretty nice buck, like just standing there, skyline looking at us. And it was kind of like, he just laughed and then bounded off. And we're like, oh, okay. But I get all my work done for the day, bomb up there. It's quite a drive to get there. Grab my bow, all my gear, throw it on real quick and take off up this ridge. And it's a pretty decent hike to get into where this little point is. Well, you know how they always say, like, listen to your gut? Mm-hmm. I really figured that I, knew he was bedded in that one timber pocket that was closer to my camera. But as I'm going, I'm like, well, what if he came further and now he's, between me and this point I want to get to? And I'm like, if I'm bombing in here, I'm just going to blow him out. So then I was like, I need to slow down and really work quietly through here. And so I slowed way down and just trying to be as quiet as I could. And what ended up happening is it took me way too long to get to the point where I wanted to get to.
Because you're going in after work.
Yeah.
So you're battling loss of daylight.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And so by the time, and like I said, it's a ways in there to get to this point. And so by the time I'm finally getting to this point, it's getting dark.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just sneaking up on this, and there's a lot of brush and trees, and I'm just trying to move through this brush. Because even though we'd got a rain, it was still like, it was just, everything was so loud. It's that typical September brush. And I'm slipping through the brush, and I can look up like 20 feet away, and I can see that there's just these couple of trees that are on this point that I want to get up against and kind of hide my silhouette and just wait there. And I'm slipping through the brush, and right as I come out where these trees are, I just hear like boom, boom, and I look, and at like 30 yards is this big rack, and he just bounds right over the edge of the hill. I had taken too long to get there, and he'd done exactly what I thought he was going to. If I'd have been there earlier up against that tree.
So he had bedded in that top-ish timber patch, not between you and the point.
Yep.
So he was just working out in the evening.
So if I'm understanding correct, like you are now at that point.
Yeah.
But you're just not in a position where you're able to see into where you want to look at. Yeah. And then you guys basically meet head on. Like, you're coming over, he's coming over, and then he probably heard you or smelled you or something, and all you hear is him taking off.
Yeah.
So that's basically what's happening on that little point right now.
Yep. And so, essentially what I was trying to do is probably what he was trying to do. Like as he's feeding out that ridge for the evening, he wants to get to that high point to get a vantage.
How far is that high point from where you thought he was bedded?
A couple 100 yards.
Okay, so he was up feeding for a little bit.
Yeah. I would say he was bedded within probably a couple 100 yards.
Okay.
My plan was to just sneak up onto this point and work my way through that brush and just get up against one of these trees where I could look towards where I thought he was bedded and hopefully try to see him coming towards me. If I had just hustled and not worried about trying to be quiet and all of that until I got closer to the point.
Because on your way, and you were overthinking that, like, what if he's way closer to me than, like, he's already gone past this point, and he's way closer to me now. So you're, like, slowing down, like, taking your time, kind of picking things apart.
Yeah. Like, thinking back on it, too, like, even if he had been through the, had came past that point and now been bedded between me and that point, like me still hunting, that's essentially what I was doing almost, was, like, still hunting my way to that point, where I was moving just super slow and quiet. But even... it would have been so difficult to see him if he'd been in there. And then the chances of him like hopping up and giving me a shot anyway would have been so slim. But, like in my gut, I felt like he was on the other side of that point. Yeah. So I felt like I was safe getting to that, but it just started second guessing
you were.
myself.
It's just that timing just wasn't on your side.
Yeah.
Because had you were not at work and you were in there like by 12, just sitting there for like 8 hours, he would have walked right into your lap.
Yeah. Like I said, when I heard him take off and I looked, he was at 30 yards at the most.
Oh, no
And
way.
you could all I could see was antlers, and it was like two bounds.
Did he see you?
I think what happened is he heard me. I think he heard me and then looked. And I kind of highly doubt he knew that like I was a human. But I think he probably saw something moving through the brush and just thought, nope, I'm out, and took off. Because I heard him, especially when you're that close, it's pretty easy to hit him hitting the ground.
Yep.
And so I could hear just like boom, 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 like 3 or 4 times where he got over the edge of the ridge, and then it stopped. And then it was quiet for, I don't know, like 10, 15 seconds, and then you could hear like a little bit of rustling, and then it was quiet again. But once you got down there a ways, I'm assuming, it seems like in my experience, a lot of times when you jump a mule deer like that, they kind of do like a J hook, or they loop around on you. And so I'm assuming what he probably did was the way he was coming from, I think he bounded over the ridge and then turned back that direction and headed back that direction. But
see, I don't know what it is. I don't know why mule deer do that.
Yeah.
Because with whitetail, I have never bumped a whitetail where they did a U-turn.
Yeah.
Like when they run that way, they're going that way.
That's probably like a good little tip to throw in there. But there's been a handful of times where, like I remember one time when I was hunting with Colton and we were walking up this ridge. I was in an old burn, and we could see this hillside like 200 yards away, and there was some does and a legal buck. It wasn't a big buck, but it was a legal buck, kind of a goofy horned thing, but just feeding. There was some ceanothus out there on that hillside, and they were feeding out there. And we glassed through them and everything. There wasn't a shooter in there, and so we were going to keep working our way up the ridge. Well, it was, I'm trying to think how to explain that. Like, think if the way you're moving is like
straight.
Yeah, noon ahead of you. They were kind of off to like 2 o'clock. And when they took off running, they were like running away from us like at 2:00. And so then we hiked up, and we didn't have to hike that much further. And we got to the top of the ridge, and then we almost went to like 9, took a straight left, and walked a little ways and run into the same group of deer. It was the same goofy horned. I think it was like a 2x3.
How much longer was when you guys first bumped them to when you guys saw them again?
It was probably like a half a mile.
Yeah, so they literally just made a loop to where you guys were going.
And so I don't know if, like, the only thing I can think of is like maybe they think you're going to follow them, so then they make a loop around to try to confuse
I don't know.
you or
I've always
something.
wondered that, and I don't know the philosophy behind it. I've always just thought of they do that because they know where they just came from is safe. So like they can go that way, but they don't know what's over there, and so they just say, "Oh, I'm just gonna go over here because I just came from over here."
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the reason, or I don't know if
That would make
like
sense.
you, where they're like, "I'm just trying to juke this guy or this predator," and just think that I'm going this way, but I'm going that way.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that only happen with mule deer every time. Because I do a lot of still hunting. And it's like when you see a buck, especially in the dark timber, like you only see 100 yards, right? You'll hear them bounding away. But when they stop, like they kind of just like sneak their way around. And so you're thinking, especially when you're following tracks, right? Like you follow them and you're like, there's no way this track that's turning back over here is this buck, right? But it turns out it is sometimes. Not all the time do they do a U-turn, but more times than not, I found that, especially the bigger mature bucks, that's what they do.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like this is kind of the same deal you're dealing with.
Yeah. Anyway, so then, I kind of tucked my tail and went home that night, just sick to my stomach.
And you know it's him.
Oh, yeah. No, I was positive.
Without a doubt.
I saw him for probably not even a full second, just that rack bail over the hillside. But, I knew 100% it was him. And so now I just bumped him, and I'm just sick to my stomach. I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to have any time this week left to hunt. The following weekend, the following Saturday, muzzleloader starts. And I do like the muzzleloader season. I think that muzzleloader with the right weather can be an awesome season. I got to hunt a fair amount during the muzzleloader. Didn't hardly see anything.
Did that buck ever show back up on trail cam after you bumped him?
No.
No. Yeah.
Nope. I did not see him on camera. And that's actually, so here's another point I should have mentioned, kind of back to the summer scouting, was there was, like I said, I've had pictures of him now for 3 years, but I've never really been able to kind of narrow down where he's at. And so this year, like I said, I just spread cameras out all over the place.
This year meaning 2025.
Yes. There's this a green timbered draw that's right off the road, literally right off the side of the road. But you get down in there and it's pretty thick and there's good cover. I'm kind of thinking to myself, I feel like most people would just overlook this because it's right there off the road. Who's going to think oh, maybe there's a big buck hiding down there. And so I went down in there and there's an awesome game trail running right through the middle of it. So I stuck a camera on it. Well, as the summer progressed, I did not put a cell camera there. It was just a regular one to begin with. And so I let it soak for probably 2 months and went back and checked it. And here's that buck going by at least once a week in daylight going through there. And I'm like, holy smokes, he's living in this timber. Unfortunately, the camera I had in there was having some issues. And so it seemed like sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. And then towards the end of the summer, probably late August, I did have cell service in there. So I went in and I put a cell camera in there. But I don't think, I'm pretty sure after I put the cell camera in there, I never had another photo of him in there. But I had this whole summer of intel from my trail cameras leading up saying oh man, he's living in that timber pocket down there. He's in there all the time. I've got that focused in. And so then back to my story where I bump him on the ridge. That's not far from there. Well, it's a little ways, but that's the direction he was going. So in my head, I was like, he's going back to that timber pocket. So I bump him, and then I never get another trail cam photo of him, I think, on any of my cameras. Muzzleloader season comes. I hunt a bit during muzzleloader. Don't ever see him. And then that's kind of part of this I'll say too is so the majority of my hunting is I'm going up there and I'm getting up on the mountain and just hunting. Some of the areas, I'll move across a little faster, but it's kind of you're essentially just still hunting most of it. Anyways, go through all muzzleloader season, nothing. And then the dreaded rifle season starts and the Orange Army appears and there's just people everywhere. And I couldn't believe it. I've hunted up there in rifle season before, and there's been a lot of people, but I don't know what it was about this year. It just seemed like they were everywhere.
Yeah, it may not. I mean, the whole Hancock Manulife thing.
Yeah.
I don't think
It
And
did the National Forest
I kind of
or
wonder too, like,
BLM or DNR any favor.
yeah, same with that along those lines, where they ban the baiting, you know, where you've always been able to use
Yeah.
mineral or throw some hay out or something. If, you know, a lot of guys that maybe had done muzzleloader or archery before, they're like, well, if we can't bait, we're going to do rifle season then.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
maybe there was just more people in the rifle population.
You congregate people and they funnel out to what is probably going to be the high success for them, right? And so that's why you get this little fluctuation of people.
Yeah. I remember like the first 2 days of season, we got hit with a snowstorm. It actually snowed. It was great weather for hunting other than your visibility was near zero. So much fog. And hunted, and then just people everywhere. I mean, every little ridge you want to go out on, there was already somebody there, or just rigs all over the roads. So I hunted opening weekend, and then that next week I'm working. And it was actually Brock. Brock texted me. It was maybe Wednesday or Thursday of that first week. And he was like, oh, actually, I take that back. He called me. He didn't text me. He called me. And he's like, hey, I just saw a picture from some guys that were hunting. And he's like, I'm pretty, because Brock and I talked back and forth quite a bit. And he knew about this buck I was hunting and stuff. And he's like, I'm pretty sure this buck they killed in those photos, that buck you're after. And I'm like, no way. And pretty soon he sends me the photo, and sure enough, it's like 100%. It's
the buck.
That buck. And actually, come to find out, I knew the people. There's this group of guys that hunt. They've hunted that area forever, and they're just rifle hunters. They always rifle hunt, but they always have a big camp. They've hunted that area forever, so I mean, it makes sense. I mean, they know the area well.
Yep.
They probably know the deer movement patterns throughout the area, type of thing. And yeah, this kid that was hunting with them, they were posted up against this tree, kind of watching this hillside, and I guess a little before dark, that buck just kind of fed out and
Got shot.
they got him.
How far did they shoot him? Do you know where they shot him?
I know pretty close to where they got him.
How far was he from where you were hunting him?
So from where like I bumped him to where I'm pretty sure they killed him was a half a mile away, probably.
It's the same.
Half a
vicinity.
mile to like 3/4 of a mile.
It's the same spot,
Yeah.
basically.
I guess that's kind of one of my lessons learned is trail cameras are great
Yeah.
to get intel and all that, but you can definitely like rely too much on what they're telling you. And so, like I said, I had that timbered draw where I'd been getting his pictures all summer, and I'm like, man, if I keep hunting that's where I kept kind of focusing my efforts, was in that area. Thinking on it now, I don't know why I couldn't have just looked at Onyx, just got on Onyx, and with the amount of pressure and the amount of people around, been like, okay, where's he gonna go? And about where they killed him, I should have been able to look right at the map and say, well, that's the kind of about as far away from the roads as you can get, and that's probably where a pressured deer is going to go. And the other thing is there was actually another pretty nice buck that had came by on camera one day during season, and Colton and I ran up there in the evening, same thing after work.
Rifle season?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this buck walked by our camera at like 10 o'clock in the morning. And what's funny is that specific camera is like 100 yards off the main road. And yeah, it's not a giant, but it was a nice buck. Walks right by the camera. And so, I kind of wanted to go up hunting anyway. And Colton's like, well, I'll go and maybe I'll, because we still had that snow from the first weekend. He's like, I'll track that buck. And we're like, okay. So we got up there and we drove right up to where my camera was just right over there, like 100 yards. And you could see that buck's tracks had came across the main road and then went up this other ridge. And Colton hopped on it. Well, I was kind of thinking the same thing as like when I jumped that buck in September, is that, it was 10 o'clock in the morning when he walked by. I was like, I don't think he's going to be going that far and probably bed down. Well, Colton proceeded to track that buck for like over 2 miles. And he said that buck never laid down, the only time it stopped, it would stop to rub little trees. And Colton actually, this is the first week of early rifle. The way Colton talked was that he was pretty sure it was actually showing kind of some ruddy signs. Like the buck was, starting to feel a little ruddy.
Starting to cruise a little bit almost.
But yeah, for over 2 miles, he followed that buck's tracks. And it never bedded down, just kept going. But it ended up going over towards this other area. And Colton even said, with that snow on the ground, when he got over there, He's like, you wouldn't believe the deer sign up in there. He's like, there's tracks everywhere. I'm like, oh, okay. And so, yeah, just thinking back on everything now, it's just like, why couldn't I have thought, like, with all this pressure around, like, where are those deer going to go? And been able to look at that spot and be like, well, that's probably where he's at. And sure enough, that's about where they ended up killing him.
That's funny because, like, one of the things, like, we've talked about it many times is how you use hunting pressure to your advantage.
Yep.
And sometimes in your case, like when archery season, you were practically the only guy up there. Like the deer had free reign. Like you couldn't really pinpoint where he was going to go, right? But it's funny because like hunting pressure, in this case, it's like, yeah, it sucks to see people. But sometimes it's like, well, there's one spot the deer could be. And if I'm there, like I'm going to shoot him, right? And it's funny how it works, right? So depending on your perspective, like pressure can be a good thing. In this case, obviously it didn't work out in your favor. It, for the most part, doesn't work out in your favor. But sometimes it does, right? I would like to say that the guy that was the kid that shot that buck, hunting pressure worked out in his favor because he was in the one spot where that buck felt safe.
Yep.
And he got shot. So that's the one thing I want to talk about because you obviously do a lot of trail cam scouting. I mean, Nate and I, we're in the middle of trail cam. I just found out that my bull elk that I've been chasing for like 3 years is still alive. And kind of like you, the problem with trail cams is they just show you a glimpse of that animal's life, right? And over the past like 6 years that I've had this trail cam over this particular wallow, I've come to learn that that's not really his core. Like he comes through there like once in July and once in September. So my trail cams aren't where he spends most of his life. And so this year, my goal is, I'm assuming he's alive because of the mild winter, is I need to expand and really get on onX and figure out like, all right, where is this bull actually spending most of his life so I can actually go in and have a better idea or a better shot at killing this bull. But that's the same thing about your deer. It's like you have this trail cam, this line of trail cams, if you will, where you get glimpses of this deer, but it might not tell you the core of where this deer is actually going to be. And like you, when you pay too much attention to the trail cam, sometimes the strategy to kill that animal is so simple.
Yeah.
But then you're overcomplicating it because you're like, if the trail cam is doing this and he's going from here, like your route that you come up with is completely irrelevant to what the deer is actually doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why it's just like cell cams are great and all that stuff, but I still tell people at the end of the day, it's like your trail cams don't kill the deer. It's like they can help you. In some cases, they can bite you.
Yeah. Just looking back on how everything played out, some lessons learned. I definitely wouldn't put as much reliability into the trail cameras as I did. I mean, they're great. I think they're awesome for like gathering intel, like inventory, which deer are on the mountain type of thing. And maybe like, what areas they are generally using more often. But another thing I'll say is I briefly mentioned it, that most of my hunting strategy was kind of just getting on the mountain and hunting. And if I had to do it again, there are some places where you can glass some of that. You can get back and glass some of it. And I think I'd have spent a lot more time glassing rather than just kind of pounding the mountain. I think in the end, I'd probably have a better result that way.
So with that said, one of the things that Brock brought up in his podcast was he doesn't necessarily look for a spot that just has deer. He primarily looks for a spot that has the opportunity to grow or allow these bucks to get old. So that spot that you've been talking about chasing this deer clearly has the opportunity to grow some pretty big bucks. So with you, is that one of the things you focus on too? Is like, like that buck might have come and gone, but there's still potential that there's new up and comers that can still basically replace what that buck was doing living in that home range.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Like I said, back when we first found this spot that we even started putting cameras in there, I mean, that was the whole reason we did that, is because we saw a really good buck.
And this was like 10 years ago.
Yeah. And so, I mean, generally I think of like if an area is good enough for the deer to reach that right age to grow its fullest potential of, antler size, there's got to be something there that's helping that deer out to do that. So if an area has that and grows big bucks, then chances are in the future it's going to grow big bucks. I know Brock talks a lot about it. Like he likes to just go like steep and deep, like way in, which is great. And that's where you can find a lot of big bucks. This spot I'm talking about where I was hunting this buck, there are roads right through the middle of it. And like I said, a lot of hunters. There's a lot of hunting pressure, but it just that the country offered kind of the right topography, the right broken up country, open ground with pockets of timber, pockets of cover, routes for escapement. That does allow some of those deer to get to that older age class. But this is another thing is I think in one of your previous podcasts, you guys had talked about having like a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. So I think that's good. Like if you have your one hunting spot, like if you're going to go hunt that spot for the day, have a couple plans. If the first one doesn't work out, you have a second one. But also having a plan B location, a plan C location. So like in this case where I'd been scouting that buck, like I'd put pretty much all my effort towards him. Like that was my one target. And then now he's gone. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well.
Back to square one.
Yeah, shoot, what do I do now? And there was one other buck up there, a really nice 3x3, big 3x3, an old deer. You could tell looking at him, he was old too. Like this first buck I was talking about, my initial target buck, and this one, like you could tell they were just kind of like the monarchs of the mountain. Most of the other deer, I think, were younger deer, but this 3-point, he's kind of one of those ones, like I have some trail cam video of him in the summer where like, if you think of like a big like beef bull, like when they walk, their brisket like sways. Yeah. That's how this buck was. Like he just huge body. I'm like, well, I was like, I'd shoot that buck too. I mean, he's a sweet buck, good mature deer. Like that's what I'm looking for primarily is a good mature deer.
Yeah.
I want to say Brock had called me on like Wednesday when he saw the picture of the one buck that got killed. So then like Thursday, I'm kind of trying to come up with this game plan in my mind. And I'm like, well, I can still go hunt this big 3-point. And I think it's like Thursday night. My brother sends me a photo of this other guy we know, and he's got that. He's holding that 3-point. He shot it that day.
Oh, man.
And I'm just like,
oh, there goes your plan B.
Yeah, man. And now, because like there really wasn't another deer on the mountain I wanted to target. And like I said, I'd put all my focus on that whole summer. And so I'm like, well, shoot, what do I do now? And so I think that's where it's good to have not only, several plans for one area, but also backup areas to go to where.
And it might just be something to keep in mind that's a higher possibility hunting in areas where there is more road access and more hunter pressure. Like the opportunity with enough people out there during general season that someone, whether they know what they're doing in that area or don't, there's enough people that there's just a higher chance that someone's going to stumble on target deer, where that's kind of one of the safety mechanisms of hunting that steep and deep country, that you get a little bit more of a security blanket that, like, maybe I'm the only person that comes in here.
Yeah, and that's just one of the things that Austin Harris talks, because he and I share, or we used to. He doesn't hunt up there as much, but like deer camp, it's kind of like this area you're describing. There's roads everywhere. It's not like you can really get remote, and just some deer's luck. I mean, they get lucky enough where they get really big and mature, but at some point in time when there's so much pressure, they're going to get bumped around, and all it takes is for a newbie to be in the right spot when that buck's coming running past him for him to shoot the buck, whether or not he even knows about that deer or not, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of our deer that we shoot at deer camp, I don't think we've ever seen them. Like we don't have history with any of the deer. Like we just go up there and we take what's given. And sometimes, most of the time, it's just a little dinky 3-points that just turn 3-point. They still think they're safe. But sometimes, once in a while, like you just run into a masher and you're just like, has this buck always lived here? And if he has, like, how come nobody's ever killed him, or how come we've never seen him? Or is he a migratory buck? We don't know, right? But that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about too, is like every area in it of itself has the potential to grow a big mature animal. Because the truth of the matter is, like, as hunters, we have a path that we want to go when we do our scouting or e-scouting per se, and like even when we do our hunt, like there's a certain place that we all can pretty much relate. Like there's a glassing point I want to get to, right? But when everybody's funneling under the same idea, there are always these little hidden pockets, and it might not necessarily be big, where these deer just kind of go in and they don't get bothered, right? Even the same bull, like my bull up here, my corkscrew, my 6-point, like he lived in a spot where there was roads all over him. People were all over him from archery season and muzzleloader season and rifle season, and he just lived in a pocket where he knew people weren't going to get off the road. And when I shot him, I shot him like 200 yards off the road where somebody walked over him, right? And so it's like there are potential to grow deer. I mean, there's higher potential areas where, yes, if there's less pressure, the odds of that deer growing up are way higher, right? But in these instances, it's like if you just took away hunting for like 5 years, I guarantee you a lot of the spots that you thought would never have a mature deer, there's probably multiple mature deer walking around, but that's just because there's no hunting. Nobody's shooting when they're young.
Yeah.
So to your point, it's like, it sounds in today's day and age, it sounds hard to even find one spot where you have a possible prospect where he's big. To have to be like, all right, there's a plan A with a big buck, here's a plan B with a big buck, here's a plan C with a big buck. Is that actually a possibility for you in your day and age? Like right now where you're like, I can find 5 potential prospects in a season and still make it happen if the first 3 didn't pan out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about 5.
Because it's hard to just find one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm probably just going to be preaching to the choir, of like what Brock said, but, just doing your scouting and knowing your country, a lot of, like last summer scouting that buck, I was out, I honestly don't know if I missed a single weekend going up and glassing. I mean, I'd see a lot of deer glassing, but I was up there every weekend glassing, but I already knew that buck was there, So I probably should have spent a lot of those weekends in some other areas doing some glassing and some scouting around trying to find some deer in other areas.
So we talked to, for instance, Braden Davis, high country mule deer, whether it's Washington or Idaho, or he might do some scouting if it's Washington, but he's done plenty of hunts where he just his hunt blind. There is his time there in the unit, and he doesn't have the opportunity to really do a whole bunch of the scouting. But he hunts really hard, 20 hours a day for however long he has in the season. Brock talks about going up, a couple times throughout the summer for even if it's just a morning, leaving the house at 2 a.m., driving up, glassing for a few hours, coming home. Austin makes a trip every other weekend into his high country spots. You live a little bit closer to this country. Do you kind of go into the same philosophy as whatever mornings you have, you're up at glassing vantages, glassing from dark when you can't see to the little bit of the morning, and then you're running trail cams in between? Or are you more out there setting trail cams as your number one priority and then just kind of glassing when you get the opportunity? Or
no, I would say priority wise, I mean, glassing would be number one. My plan for this summer is I kind of want to use my trail cameras in 2 different ways, because a lot of our country up here, as you guys know, is just dense timber. I mean, you can't glass it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so there's some areas I have picked out that I want to get into and set some cameras in those type of areas where you can't glass, just to try to gather inventory of what deer might be in those areas. And then the second way I want to use them is by first glassing and trying to find a potential target buck, and then setting cameras in those areas to try to figure out which of those areas maybe those deer are using more, on trails or pockets of timber, maybe bedding areas.
I'll ask you this. So say you got a guy that has a weekend to get out, right? And they have their scouting weekend, and they have 2 morning prime times and maybe 1 evening prime time, right? You have a Saturday morning, a Saturday evening, and then maybe a Sunday morning, and then you got to head home. You pick a few different spots. You don't really see anything during that time that you're super favorable about, and they're not just going to run home for the day and come back up. This is their weekend. You're talking about July, August scouting when you have really, really long days. So they're saying, okay, now I'm going to fill my day with boots on the ground, just trying to pound timber and find some good spots to aim trail cams, because I came over here with half a dozen trail cams and I don't want to go home with any, right? But they, at the same time, when they want to have some confidence in trail cams that they're putting up. Now with Washington, you've got this no baiting rule, which mule deer and whitetail alike, mineral sites were a huge magnet for deer activity, for trying to get inventory on these mountains. What's your strategy going to be with kind of these really densely forested areas where you've got game trails, but a lot of these areas in Northeast Washington, if you spend a day hiking through timber, you will come across a lot of game trails, and a lot of good ones, way more than you would be like, well, there's only really one here on the mountain for me to put my camera on. You may have 24 game trails, side hilling. Did I just catch a mouse?
I think you just caught a mouse.
Yes. You may have a couple dozen trails side hilling this mountain, and then, you know, kind of a indecision loss of what you're going to do there with your trail cameras. What's your strategy of these timbered areas of finding deer now?
Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's definitely gonna be more difficult not being able to throw some mineral out. I think one of the best things you can look for when you're out boots on the ground scouting is tracks. Like, just try to, I mean, when you see a big buck track, you're gonna know it's a big buck. Trying to find, you know, hiking some of those trails, looking for the topography that where they're gonna like be using a saddle going over a ridge top, or, you know, maybe there's a little bench that wraps around a steep mountainside or something. Trying to find a game trail on one of those that, and then maybe you see this big buck track on there. Like I said, I think last year I did put a camera on a spring where the water pulled up. I had some deer and stuff, but I didn't have much luck with that. I do know they say like mule deer get a lot of their water from just the plants that they eat.
And this is something that's kind of come up as a repetitive topic throughout this, or not repetitive, but a recurring topic throughout this this month. Is
and it sounds like everybody's on agreement on
water is not necessarily the gold mine that a lot of people think it is.
One, and especially this area too, like, I mean, you could probably go walk one hillside and find like 3 creeks and 4 different springs. You know, there's generally not a lack of water, so I'm not real keen on doing that. Kind of back to what your trivia duel question was, talking about the glands. So, like I said, growing up being a whitetail hunter, you know, we talked a little bit about like scrapes, licking branches for whitetails. Something I want to play around with a little bit this summer. And I've tried to do some research on it, but I just can't find a whole lot on the internet. But, you know, we can still use synthetic scents. And so what I want to do is just play around with some different synthetic deer scents and see, you know, with my overall goal just being like, if I can find maybe like where several good, well-used trails converge in a saddle or something like that, if I can add some sort of like a synthetic scent there that attracts the deer's attention enough to make them stop and smell that area enough for me to get a trail cam photo.
This isn't mule deer specific, but I've seen there's a guy over in Michigan or Minnesota that has done some of these side-by-side trail cams on the same trails before he adds a synthetic scent and after. And I don't know what scent he uses, but it's really interesting because he's got some where it must be a pretty predominant game trail in the area, or the other, you know, a surrounding is really thick. I don't know the topography of the area or what the setting is, but not just whitetail come and check the scent on this trail. You know, he kind of plays the highlights reel, but he'll have half a dozen species, everything from, you know, coyotes up to bears to moose to deer, kind of stopping and checking. And even if it's not, and I don't know if it's a deer scent that he's using or if it's just a synthetic scent, like if he's just dousing a branch in vanilla or something, and it's just something that's enough to pull animals off of surrounding trails to come just check it out, and just the amount of game. So
I'm sure it piques their curiosity, you know.
Yeah.
Like, what's that? Go check it out.
Yeah.
An interesting little part of that, I recently, you guys know, like the Born and Raised guys out of Oregon, they recently posted a blacktail video where they were tree stand hunting for blacktails.
Yep.
And I was watching their video, and they're in dark timber, and this real nice 4-point blacktail comes walking through, and they're filming it going through the timber. And I had to rewind it and watch it because at first I thought it lifted its head, like it's cruising on pretty good, and all of a sudden it stops and it lifts its head, and I thought it was maybe just eating some moss off a branch or something. But I went back and looked, and I mean, as far as I can tell, it looks to me like 100% like it's hitting a licking branch. Because there's a branch hanging down, and you can see it just rubbing that branch all over its face.
And that's not something that you hear much about blacktail guys talk about either. You don't really hear them talk about licking branches.
A lot of this stuff's whitetail.
And like I said, that's sure what it looked like to me. And so, you know, it hits that branch for like a couple seconds, and then
So are you thinking, I know you kind of, well, maybe you didn't mention, but we were talking about earlier, maybe before the podcast, maybe trying to get a multi-season tag or being up to draw a multi-season tag. Are you open to the possibility that you might be getting like mule deer hitting a branch or a scrape, and that you would saddle or tree stand hunt for these things?
No. Most likely not.
Or more so just to try to get an inventory of the mountain and just use it in that way.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean, say you had like a south-facing hillside that had good feed on it, where those deer were liking to come out there in the evenings and at night and feed. And you had to say maybe you got a really good saddle that leads from like a dark, nasty timber pocket on the north side, that this saddle leads up from that onto this open south face with feed. Maybe if you could implement something like that, and hey, like I did this, and these deer are hitting it quite a bit, as you know, just checking it out as they're coming by to go feed for the evening. I mean, yeah, in that case, I mean, it might warrant setting up in like a tree stand or a saddle or something over that. But
yeah, another thing I was wondering. So I feel like most people that everybody kind of has their different focus or the things they really enjoy this month that we've talked to about mule deer hunting. Some of them are just like super into the glassing game, you know, like Austin, obviously in the high country, or Braden, whereas Brock has been more talking about, you know, really being into the fine details, the tracks and the browse and the feed. And something especially kind of hunting this broken country in Northeast Washington, that it's kind of almost the difference in why I feel like I find sheds in the areas that I hunt as well, but I don't find them while I'm hunting because I'm like not always looking down. How's your, just like you're getting out of the truck and you're going to hike and hunt, like you're talking about finding tracks and like looking at these things, but you don't want to be walking through the woods looking at your feet. Is it kind of like this intermittent thing where you're working through timber patches, or like find a really good game trail and there you're kind of looking for tracks? Or do you feel like you're always cluing into like the tracks and the browse and the things while also looking out and glassing and kind of still hunting these deer?
I mean, if you're still hunting properly, I mean, you should be moving slow enough to where you're seeing that like tracks or fresh browse on the shrubs, and still being able to scan everything around you. But also, if you've kind of put your homework in ahead of time, you know, and done your scouting, you should know kind of what areas that you should be still hunting through, and maybe which ones you can move through a little bit faster.
Mm-hmm. Let's say you set up trail cams in a spot this year and it doesn't pan out. Nothing you want to go after. How long did you say before you said, like, I'm just going to completely pull out of this spot?
So if I were to go out, actually here before too long, I'll probably start getting some out. That's a good question, because there's kind of a couple different answers to that. If I left them out all year long, this whole summer, and a lot of times I'll leave my cameras through the winter.
Yep.
There's kind of two ways I would look at it. Number one, did I have any big bucks, like any target bucks on it? If not, then it's going to depend on, did I have like the amount of deer that were hitting it? Do I have good young bucks that were hitting it that maybe I want to keep tabs on for like the following year, or maybe even a couple years ahead of that? If there's enough deer in the area that, you know, I'm kind of liking what I'm seeing, but maybe not a target buck, then I might just leave that camera there and let it continue to take inventory for me into the next year and so on.
Yeah, because I think one of the things I've been a culprit of it is like trail cams are not cheap, right? Like we have a very finite amount of resources when it comes to trail cams. And so one thing I have come to learn is sometimes like you are in a good spot, but you just have terrible camera placement. And so your cameras just don't pick up those animals, because you can have two trail cams on a ridge, but man, that ridge is big. Like the deer can be moving just right behind your camera and you don't even know about it, right? Because like you have to understand, like okay, so this is the craziest part, right? So I had 3 cameras in 2025 within 20 yards of each other looking into this wallow. So I have one, like imagine a triangle. They're all looking into one wallow. And my cell cam in September had no elk. The trail cam that I just checked the other day had elk in the wallow. And I was like, what in the world? So sometimes it's not even that they're not there. Sometimes your camera just doesn't trigger.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was like, oh. So with that said, it don't just think that like because your camera didn't trigger, it doesn't mean anything. Because another one was in 2023 when I sat at that wallow. I had a live working camera there. And on day 5, I had a cow elk come through, and she walked exactly on the trail that you would normally think they came through, right? And she walked in, and I had this encounter with her for like 5 minutes where she was walking back and forth across the wallow, right? And I was like, I'm going to go check my trail cam, see how many photos I got of her. I got 2 photos of her. And she was in the wallow, like going back and forth, like 20 yards in front of the trail cam. And I'm like, I got 2 photos.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, like, are there actually deer there that your cameras just don't do? And I will go to say that the camera I had there is a pretty reliable trail cam compared to what I have used in the past. It's not a necessarily cheap camera either, right? And so it's just one of those things where I find it intriguing because I feel like sometimes people pull the plug a little too early, because in 2024, like when I thought that my target bull right now, Boomer 6, had died, I was like, there's really no reason for me to leave these cameras here, right? But last year he came into the wallow one time, and I'm like, well, there's my game plan.
Yep.
It takes one photo.
It instills a little bit of hope in you.
I feel like that adds to the not putting too much faith or planning or just like your outlook on the hunting season in that area on your trail cams.
Yeah.
I had a very similar thing happen where not mule deer hunting, but whitetail hunting this last year from a tree stand, and I had a trail cam, and I watched one of my target bucks walk 2 yards behind the tree. Because this was an area with heavy deer traffic where you can't pick all of the game trails. You just have to pick what you feel like is a good intersection, good placement of your game cam. And I did have a lot of deer come by that game cam, and just happened to be that I did watch the target buck. I would have never known that he was in the area. And that was the only time I was there where he passed through. I never actually got any game cam photos of him on that camera, ever. And so that may have just been his trail that he came through, or maybe I just happened to be lucky and sitting there when he came through for one of the few times he did come through that little area. But it just makes you realize that trail cams are really great. Like, I don't want to overstate that. They're great.
They're a tool.
They're a fantastic tool. They're great at giving inventory, but they are a means to an end.
Yeah.
They are not the end itself.
Like, I have some people who, like, cell cams are obviously a very debated topic today.
Yeah.
It's being banned across a lot of states, right? And I understand in some cases, like, let's say you're hunting in the Midwest where, like, you just have a field where you can, if the deer walks by, like, it takes you 5 minutes to get there, right?
So amongst you're just live streaming on this Tacticam Ultra.
But here where we hunt, it, like, at least for me, I can only speak for myself. I set up my cameras in a spot where you can't just drive and walk in there and be there in like 5 minutes. To get to my spot driving wise, sometimes it's like 2 hours. And then from there, it takes you another 2 hours to even get to the trail. So you're talking about a minimum 4 hours of that animal triggering your camera and then potentially being out of the country, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why, and then the other one's like, that's why I've never put an emphasis on like, let me set up the cell cam so that like I can just like, be ready to go. Because most of the time it's like, especially in this thick country, like you can see an animal for 100 yards and he takes 2 steps and he's gone. This is a story. So last year, right, 2025, October 24th, this is the day before rifle elk season opened. I had a cell cam. And this is Northeast Washington, so it's a general season for any bull. I had a branch bull walk right past that camera. And this is like October 24th, 5 o'clock p.m. Opening day is in like 14 hours. I sent it to my brother. I was like, dude, there's a bull that just walked by my camera. And at that time, we were already packing for our trip, right? It was a Friday before we left. And we had already made our executive decision to go spike hunting. And so he was like, well, do we go spike hunting or do we try to go find that bull? I was like, dude, in 14 hours, like, who knows where that bull is going to be? Like, I'm not going to go chase that bull just because he walked by that camera.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we didn't, because we ended up pulling a triple on spike somewhere else. But it's like, that's what I'm saying. It's like your trail cams are at most a tool and sometimes a very effective tool. But in order for you to actually be able to be in a position where it's like, it actually works in your favor, I have come to find out that you have to be there already. So like the wallow, like the cow elk I was talking about, the only way I was going to kill her was I was sitting there with my trail cam.
Well, I was going to give you that extreme of the other end where you're not 2 hours away with a 2-hour hike. I have a camera that's 13 minutes away if I'm in the car and a 10-minute walk in. So I am less than 30 minutes from into this spot in the tree stand. And the whitetail in that area, and this is archery hunting, it's if I'm not in the stand when that deer's there, that's your opportunity.
Exactly.
I'm not within. I've tried within 30 minutes. Those deer
they're gone.
I mean, they can be hundreds and hundreds of yards away.
Like, even if you were able to get there and they were still there, like with a bow,
It's
like trying to sneak in and shoot one.
It's like, let me just give him a tree stand really quick.
No, it's not. And I mean, it's maybe a different topic. Way back when we had you on talking about predators, that's a different discussion, talking about knowing that there's a predator in the area and doing calling and things like that. Or maybe if we're talking about cell cams during, you know, like a September bull hunt, you know, archery elk hunt, where you could maybe know that they're in the vicinity and call. But if we're talking about like a mule deer, where you're trying to get the upper hand on this deer that's trying, you know, just kind of this ghost through the woods. The cameras are, I think, what we're talking mostly is using them as a tool during the hunt.
Yeah.
Very different than talking about using them as a tool during preseason to get an inventory.
I mean,
of deer
your
in the
story
area.
was a prime example of how it bit you.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that Austin pointed out too. He's like, when it comes to mule deer, like they're not patternable, they're predictable. Like you can kind of think that what he's going to do, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to walk step for step every single time, right? Whitetail a little bit different. Like sometimes whitetail will use the same trail over and over until something bumps them out of their little schedule, or they change their phase.
Yeah.
Right. But mule deer, it's pretty rare for you to have this buck doing the same thing for a long time.
We've really been able to observe that in some of these late whitetail spots over the years, like back when we could bait. You know, perfect example, you go throw a bale of alfalfa out and you'll get whitetails coming in on it every day. And it's pretty common, you know, you go check your SD card on your camera and, oh, shoot, it's November, you know, so they're rutting, but hey, a real nice mule deer showed up. But I mean, he might have stopped, got one bite of alfalfa, and he's gone, and you never see him again.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they're not them and whitetails. They're totally different
creatures.
That's why mule deer they're so fascinating because like I just feel like you can never really figure them out, and it always leave you questioning. And whether you hate it or not, like that's just mule deer, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of these tactics that you hear a lot about people using for whitetail, you don't hear about it for mule deer a lot because it frankly just doesn't have the same track record of success that people are pulling. Yeah, sometimes it might work out in that favor where like everything just works out in that one instance, but it's not a repeatable process where you can be like, I'm going to do the same exact thing for this new buck that I have, right? And so that's why the whole trail cam, the scouting things, it's very important. But the reason why I've been asking the questions I'm asking them is because at some point you can get a good idea of what the mule deer might do, but you can never truly know like what and exactly what they're gonna do. Like you can have a vicinity of like, okay, this is probably where this deer's gonna hang out, but like I don't know where exactly he's gonna bed or where he's gonna come out and feed.
Yeah.
You know?
And kind of like I was talking about, kind of the way I'm planning on using the cameras this year is just primarily just for inventory. You know, that's pretty much all it's gonna be.
And I think
knowing what's in the area.
For me, I think my trail cams have always just been inventory. I just want to know what's lurking around. Not necessarily to say like, I'm gonna go sit on this trail cam and go kill something.
Yeah, that's all too common around here. Just these thick timbered spots. You just can't glass them from anywhere. You know, like throw a camera up in there, and if you get a big buck, you know he's living in there somewhere. Now you got to go find him.
Yeah, for sure. And it's another thing. Again, not necessarily mule deer specific, but trail cam specific. Is that one of my favorite things that trail cams give me is confidence that there's animals in the area, especially if I know that I'm not going to have time to, you know, if I have plan A through D for general season, and I may go through a few of those because everybody's out and I have to get to 4 spots, but I know I'm not going to be able to thoroughly scout all 4 of those. If I at least know there's animals in the area, it gives me that little bit boost of extra confidence. Samong and I have hunted places that are not secret places where we've had cameras, and, you know, because of social media and stuff, people see what deer we're seeing. And multiple people will be like, "Oh, we have all those deer on camera," and the fact that us, along with half a dozen other people, have the same deer on camera means nothing, because to my knowledge, nobody killed that deer, right?
Yep.
And so it's, you know, even if I felt like I had that deer nailed down for 3 years during its whole summer pattern on camera, so could have a handful of other guys. That
Doesn't
deer
mean
still
anything.
survived, yeah.
The guy that
So it's
walks
like,
into that spot oblivious ends up shooting your target buck.
exactly. So like take it with a like use it basically as only a benefit, but don't let the trail cams be a disappointment.
Yeah.
Like know that we love our tactic cams. They have been incredibly reliable, but no trail camera on the market's perfect with wind and shade conditions, and if something covers your camera sensor, I mean, a whole gamut of things can happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
No trail camera is perfect.
Usually around here, it's a bear putting a tooth through it.
A bear or a tree can get blown over. It doesn't mean, you know, even if you find the perfect trail, you know, a lot of times those big mature animals may not use the main drag. You know, there's so many things that a trail camera doesn't show you about the picture. However, they are still great. I mean, I feel like we're balancing the scales here of trail cams. And the scales definitely tip towards net positive.
Something I want to add here, too, is this is primarily for, like, kind of my home range, like where I've grown up hunting my whole life. If I'm hunting in Oregon or Montana or any other western state for mule deer, you know, if I can get there ahead of time to go to scout, maybe scout some of the country that I've been e-scouting, that's great. But chances are I'm not going to go down there and go set cameras out and do all of that stuff. And even if I didn't have time to scout, I have no problem bouncing into areas that maybe I've e-scouted and like think, oh man, that looks good, and just going in there and exploring.
Yeah, it's a multifaceted thing, because at the end of the day, it's just you're trying to do what you can to kind of give you whatever advantage you can, right? Like trail cams, they don't make you successful. They can help you. Your physical scouting, like you're out there glassing, it doesn't help you kill an animal per se, but it helps you hone in on a strategy, right? It's like none of these things are really relevant when you're actually on the hunt, right? Because you can do all this homework and your fall looks like, I have this deer down and he never shows up. And it's like, well, that was all completely waste of time. Whereas you can go out there with no plan and you end up killing a really good bug because you just found the right place at the right time. And so the whole scouting thing, it's very important. I do think that there's a lot of merit to it, because like in some cases, like with Brock, like the only reason why he killed that buck was because of all the scouting that he's done, right? It does work out in your favor sometimes. But what I'm trying to say is, like, for you to have everything come into fruition, it takes a lot of the stars aligning for you.
Oh yeah.
So people like trail cams, even with cell cams today, like it hardly scratches the equation for you. You know, like even right now, that Boomer 6, I've had like cameras out for him. I think over the past like 6 years, I've gotten like at most like 30 photos of him. And I'm saying 30 photos with multiple photos of being him there in one time. Like, because I have my cameras like on three photos. Like it'll take three bursts. So if you take about like how many times has he showed up in the wallow, it's probably like 8 times.
Yeah.
Over 6 years.
What's your delay?
Delay between each shot or trigger time?
Like the trigger time between each
So I
burst.
have a 2-shot. So when the animal walks by, there has to be at least 2 seconds for it to trigger. And then I have a 15-second in between my burst. And the reason why I have it like that, particularly at the wallow, is because the wallow is a natural resource that you would think they'd spend some time. So like it's not like a trail where like if you don't catch them walking by, like you're missing them.
Right.
The wallow is usually in a spot where they'll come mill around. And so I did that because I've also learned that moose really like wallows. Yeah. And they just come in, they just sit there for like 3 weeks straight, and your camera's just nothing but moose. Yeah. And so I kind of try to balance between like, I don't want all this moose photo, but I also want to be able to still effectively capture like elk. And the other one, like bears too. Bears love wallows. Like I get more bear photos than anything else. Oh, yeah. So my goal this year is I'm going to go set up a tree stand over a wallow for a bear.
Yeah. You start to learn, putting cameras on wallows and little water holes and stuff that and bears are good swimmers.
And so that's one thing about the scouting thing I've learned too, is like, so that wallow I'm talking about, right? Like I have the primary purpose of setting those cameras up because I want to catch those elk when they're wallowing. What I have come to learn over the past, like basically a decade at this point of having cameras on that wallow for 10 years in a row is there's only a certain amount of time throughout the year where there's actually activity. So from like November through like March, there's nothing there. Yeah. No deer, no bear, no nothing. But as soon as May hits, you start getting some of those bears that are coming out. June, that's when the elk first start showing up. And usually it's just cow elk. Cow elk and sometimes calves if they have them. But until like July, that's when you finally get some velvet photos. That's when I get Boomer 6. He'll come hit one time in July.
So you're actually getting him in there in the summer then?
One time.
Okay.
He shows up at the wall one time. And then he vanishes and he shows up one time in early September. And then he's gone. I don't know where he's at. So I'm trying to figure him out, right? But my point is, you can have this even such a good funnel of a resource where you're like, I know that there's an animal that's going to come here at some point. And it still doesn't really produce the results that you might be looking for, right? Because I have come to find out, like, those elk, I have had elk wallowing there before, but most of the time they come in there to drink. They don't sit there and wallow around as you would expect. They come in there because there's a puddle and they come in there to drink. That's a mistake I made because when in 2017, first year doing archery, when I sat at that wallow, I had a camera on it, and the day before opener, I had that bull, and he came in, he sat on the wallow. And so there's almost like 2 stages of this wallow where up top it's just kind of like a mud flat. There's really not any water. And then down lower, like 5 yards, there's 2 logs that kind of pull up a little puddle. And to me, I had thought that, oh, well, the day before, this bull had come up. He didn't come and drink. He came in perfectly broadside as I was planning. He came and just sat in the wallow. And so like, he was kind of rolling around. You could tell like he had like dirt up in his antlers and whatnot. And so the next day when we went in there, I checked my trail cam. I told my brother, I was like, oh, he's going to come exactly how I planned, right? Well, the next day when he came in, he didn't come in like that. He came from the bottom because he was going to come up and start drinking water. That's exactly what he did, because with how the contour worked, for them to be in the best posture to drink that water, because it's being pretty low, they want to be on the underside so that the water's elevated so they don't have to go super low to drink.
Right.
The problem with that was he's now frontal to me, which I was not completely planning. And so it's just like whatever resource you're planning, like saying I'm setting up this camera for, you might learn that the animals don't use it for that reason at all. And in the instances where you're like, that's a resource where I don't think I'm going to get a photo, well, it might be a lot more productive than you think.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I'm saying. Like the trail cam stuff it's a nuance.
Yeah.
Okay? It's not like it's going to always be perfect.
Well, and I think we kind of talked about this on our last podcast as well, but just thinking back on the amount of times where, I mean, this is slightly different from what you're talking about, but like where I'm like, oh, this is a great elk spot, you know, and like throw some cameras in there and never get any elk, but oh man, there's some big deer in there. Or like we had that, I think we talked about that on the podcast, but we had the one spot where we'd been seeing some big whitetails out in this field, this person's field, and on the back side of it was public. And so we were like, let's throw some cameras in there. And out of all the years we had a camera in there, we never, ever had one of those nice bucks on our camera, but there were bull elk all over back in there.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I mean, it's always kind of like an exploration, you know, like you never know really what you're going to find.
Yeah, and all of this, I just wanted to tie it back to the question I was asking. Is like, how soon do you give up on a spot, right? And that's what I want to say, because like even right now, like I'm in the middle of like planning like where I actually want to set up my trail cams, because I'm like, where do I think I want to hunt? Where do I think I have the best possibility of killing something, whether that's elk or mule deer in this case? But I think I guess we're kind of driving the point home. It's like your trail cams at the end of the day, it's like it can help you. Yeah. Sometimes it can bite you, but they don't do the hunting for you. Now, don't get me wrong. I've heard of like crazy stories of people like setting up cell cams and they have like a gun set up there and they can just press a remote control and the gun goes off and shoots the animal. I didn't even know that was possible. Like,
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, I heard that from a retired game warden. He's like, we've had call-ins of people doing that, and I'm like, first off, I don't even know how you do that. Yeah, but
because you know, like even the best cell cameras I've found, I've used quite a variety of cell cameras, and like I've found most of them from the time that motion is detected and they trigger, and it takes a camera, to the time you get it on your phone is usually a couple minutes. Yeah. And so, yeah. So
I don't know. I'm just saying, it's like at the end of the day, like anybody can exploit anything. I really believe it. But to me, it's like I hunt because I enjoy hunting, right? And if you took the hunting out of the hunt, it's like it's not hunting. Like I don't want to do that, right? Like if I'm sitting here pressing a remote control off to fire and shoot an animal, first off, that's illegal. Yeah. The second thing is like you're not even hunting. Like you're just sitting at home doing whatever you're doing, and then you're pulling a trigger. Like it's not hunting at that point. So your trail cam's like, yeah, you can exploit it however you want. And I know that there are people out there that will absolutely exploit it, hence all the rules that are now coming across all the states out there. But, you know, like that's something that people have to make up for themselves, and I'm not going to sit here and speak for everybody.
Yeah. I think one way to summarize it too is like, don't look at game cameras to make your hunt easier. Like make the actual hunt itself easier. Yeah. You're still going to be hunting just as hard. You just may be hunting with a different purpose. Hunting for a specific animal, hunting knowing that there's a certain class of animal in the area. But it's not going to change anything about that specific hunt, whether you were there with the cameras or there without the cameras.
Yeah. Like my wallow, like as of right now, I'm waiting for draw results to come out, right? Let's say as it goes as planned for like the normal people like us, we don't draw anything, right? You can't relate, but
not talking about Clayton or any of the Vinings here.
But it's like, let's say in the event that I do kill, Boomer 6 comes into the wall line and shoot him. It's not because my camera was there that triggered. It's because I was sitting there waiting for him. Yeah. Right? Like that's at the end of the day, that's what it is. All my camera that has done for me at that wallow has confirmed that he's still alive. And if I go in there, I know that I have a shot to kill him. But if I didn't have trail cams, I'm like, oh, he could have died. I don't know if he's actually still here. Right. What I actually ended up learning is just having that wallow there. It's like sometimes, like I have seen a lot of bulls that come and pass Like you'll have like a bull. I'll get him like 3 years in a row, and then he vanishes. I don't know if he gets shot or whatever happens, right? But there are like Boomer 6. He doesn't show up at the wall often, but he's been there, I would assume, his whole life, right? And so like you sometimes hit it in a time where you just kind of get these animals where they're passing through, right? But then sometimes you figure out like, yeah, there are animals that will pass through, but you find out that there are resident animals that truly live there. Like Boomer 6, I would say that's his home range. I don't know where his core is, but he lives there.
Yeah.
Like last year in 2025, I had a little raghorn with a cow come in, like opening day of archery season. I've never seen that bull before. I don't know where he came from, right? But I'd be surprised to see if he was here this year again, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like,
It'd
it's
probably
just
be
nuance.
going from a raghorn, growing another year, it'd probably be hard to tell. But
Yeah, but the good thing about that spot is like, because I have scouted that spot for literally 10 years, it's like I know how few elk show up there. And so like usually when you see a repeat, it's like you usually can kind of distinguish them. And sometimes it's just like, oh, I have no idea where this elk came from. But one of the craziest one I found out was I actually found in 2021 to 2022, I had a spike bull the first year, and then the next year he was a 5-point, and I know it was him because I could tell by his face. He had the same exact face.
some markings or something.
Yeah, like I was like, oh, that's crazy that he went from a spike to a 5-point in that. And then there was a bigger bull. So the year he was a spike, there was another bull with him. He was a raghorn, and then the next year he was like a bigger raghorn. And then after 2022, I never saw those two bulls again. But then Boomer 6 was still coming around because those 2 years when I had those two bulls, Boomer 6 was there. Yeah, so it's just I don't know, interesting, man.
Yeah, like you're talking about, essentially you're trying to have those cameras just to get them either coming to a resource or passing by. I mean, that's tough with elk because they just move so much, and they cover so much country. Like on the mule deer topic, if you've got it on a trail, like we were talking earlier, like about a mule deer's home range, if it's a square mile or, even up to 2 square miles, if you find that saddle in a mountaintop and you throw a camera on a good trail and in the middle of summer you happen to get a big buck cruising through there, well then, to me, I mean, in my eyes, I would look at it as like, well, that buck's, he's got to be living in here somewhere, so now I got to figure him out and figure where.
If you take it as a perfectly square mile, a 1x1 square mile, that does not mean that they're frequenting all of that square mile the same amount.
Yeah.
No.
They're going to have their areas where they spend a heck of a lot more time, and then they may have their other areas they venture out to every so often.
Yeah. And that was a prime example with Brock's buck. I mean, he had 11 cameras set up in there, and that buck never showed up on camera. He killed that buck 50 yards from a camera.
Yeah.
So it's like at the end of the day, it's like, it's just, I don't know, like trail cams, people say that.
Like the lack of cameras did not keep him from going out and
exactly
hunting that buck.
Like if you looked at it from a trail cam perspective, it's like, yeah, that buck's never going to, like, you're never going to find that buck. But because Brock understood that, like, I don't know exactly where he's at. But I would assume he's here. Like, that's why he killed him, because he was out there, right? And so it's just one of those things because, I mean, you're one of the few people, like, I guess you and Brock and Austin, like, you guys are the 3 out of the 5 that we had where you scout really hard. Whether you're shed hunting, you're always keeping an eye out. Whether you're out there actually scouting, like you don't just go out there and scout. Like, you scout pretty hard. You scout with intention. Because there are a lot of people out there, well, they'll say like, yeah, I'm going to go scouting, but what they're doing is they're just driving around. Like, there's really no intention of like, I'm trying to pick out exactly what this herd of deer are doing. It's just kind of like, I'll go out and see what I see. Like in your case, when you first found out about that spot, yeah, you and Colton were just driving around like goofing off probably.
Yeah.
But then once you found that, it's like, all right, there's a purpose why I'm going to scout this spot. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, they were there and I don't know why they're there.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Like scouting, we beat scouting pretty hard on this podcast because I think it's kind of a good leeway because we're right in the prime of scouting season.
Yeah. We're getting right there.
Any topics that you still want to touch on while we have Clayton here?
I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm sure anybody watching on YouTube wants to hear about some of these sheds that you've come across in your scouting years.
So we have a stash over here that's right next to Clayton. And I don't even know the backstory of these, but Clayton, if you want to hold them up to your camera.
So
what's the story on these guys?
This is a set I found last year. Those looking on the
video. This is up in this region.
Yep.
All of these are.
So these horns were actually, I figured, a year old when I found them. Those watching on the video.
Can I see one?
Yeah. They look pretty brown. I like to use on like hard white antlers, stain or like permanganate.
So you colored these?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And that one, I got to fix a couple spots that have chipped off there. But These ones turned out pretty good. They look
What are these holes here?
I think I'd put like a couple dowels in there I'd probably put like some sculpting clay in there to fix that chew mark.
Oh, I see.
I kind of like to, the squirrels, our area is so bad for the squirrels that these antlers don't have to lay out there very long. They get just chewed to heck. So I kind of like to, if I can, if it's a nice one that I'm interested in doing it, I'll try to repair it a little bit. And one of my next projects at some point, which is going to be a very major one, is this antler.
That guy's wonky, man.
Which is the...
Yeah, it's actually the match
for that one
to this buck.
So you actually just put out a video of that yesterday or something?
Yeah, a couple days ago we made a little video on YouTube.
I just watched it, and I've never had somebody like leave a shed and then go back just to go get the shed.
Well, for the audio people here, he's holding up side by side of what you taped out. If the chewed up left side matched the right side, it'd be about a 215-inch.
Yeah, I guess about 210 to 215. And I mean, you look at these horns, I mean, they're old. They've been laying out there for a long time.
What do you think, like 7, 8 years old?
Probably at least.
Yeah. They're pretty chalk and torn up.
Yeah, and like this one, his good side, I mean, it's still in good shape other than just being kind of cracked. But I mean, that thing's just a giant. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, this other side just fell apart.
Took the brunt of the elements for both the sheds there.
Yeah.
How far were these sheds apart?
About 80 yards.
Oh, okay.
And this you taped this shed at 98?
Yeah.
And is that estimating broken points?
Nope.
So
that's just
98
what it is.
inches with a broken large flyer here, a broken tip here, and quite a bit of a broken G4.
Yep.
So this is probably probably
insane.
at least probably 105, maybe 104, 105-inch deer.
Yeah,
size.
probably close to that 104.
Yeah.
And I don't claim to be like a professional scorer or anything, but I feel like I'm fairly meticulous when I do it.
I mean, it's a big deer.
Big deer.
And what sucks about this one, because like I said, other than just being chalky and kind of cracked, I mean, that horn there is still in great condition, but this one, it's just bad. But this whole G2's gone. And so, but if it matched that one where this came up and forked, he's actually like very symmetrical other than he doesn't have that big flyer off his G4.
And so I know you were hoping for this with your video, hopefully, but if any of you guys watching are dedicated Northeast Washington guys or old timers from the area that you think you may have a photo of this deer that you'd want to share so that he could rebuild these sheds, just reach out to one of us.
Yeah.
You can DM the Bearded Brothers on Instagram, or you can send us an email or send Samong a DM, because it would be pretty cool to see what that deer was when he was on hoof.
Yeah, I'd love to have just see a photo so I could tell what he actually had, and then, try to fix these up. And I've watched a handful of videos on repairing and fixing antlers and painting them back to color. And
then this is not a Euro of a deer you shot, but this is just sheds mounted on a head.
Yep, that's another set that I found.
And
this is just a fake Euro mount.
And I think that personally is, I mean, I know that, like, score-wise, you said that score's like in the 170s.
Yeah, I think it was about 170.
That is one of the wildest Washington deer I've ever laid eyes on.
His bases and those burrs are big, gnarly.
His burrs are almost deep enough they could all be like scored as points.
No kidding.
There's a handful there that probably could be.
There's probably 8 to 10 burrs on each side that would be measurable. Maybe not an inch, but measurable.
So this buck, I was actually with a buddy, a really good friend of mine, when I found this set. And same thing, these are actually a year old when I found them. But he found, I don't remember which side it was, but he found one side brown, fresh. And we searched and searched, and we could never match it up. But it's same thing. I mean, it's just a fresh brown antler, but it looks identical to this. I mean, super incredible. Massive bases, all this junk.
So you have a pretty good collection of deer here. And I guess one of the last things I want to ask you before we close out this podcast is, do you see any similarities in terms of where you find these big mature animals, whether that's a shed or that's them on the hoof? Like, is there any resemblance?
Yeah. Well, like I said, some of these areas where I'm finding the sheds are fairly low where I wouldn't really expect to find them during hunting season. But there's probably similarities in some of these areas as to where like they're living in the winter when they shed compared to some of the areas where they're living. And don't get me wrong, I mean that you can find a lot of sheds on your nice open south slopes with timber on them or whatever. I found with mule deer, I find them on any slope. It can be south.
It just adds
north
to
face.
the idea that they're just random.
Yeah, I find a lot of mule deer antlers on north slopes.
Really?
Yep. And I think I generally kind of correlate that to where what I believe is they're either feeding on like a west or it could be even a south, but like a west or an east slope. And then say if they're on an east slope, they're getting that sun in the morning, they're out there feeding, and then they're wrapping around onto a north slope.
And that's when it drops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or same thing in the evening, they could be feeding on a west slope, getting that sun, and then just going into a north timber pocket or something.
I think that just reinforces the idea of why we love mule deer is because, like, I don't think there's really anybody out there that have truly figured out mule deer. And I don't think you can ever figure out what they're doing because I feel like half the time they don't even know what they're doing. And so with that said, it's you brought up some really good points. It's like one thing that I can say throughout the past 5 weeks that we've had guests on here is like there's a similarity in the aspect that there are areas that grow big mature bucks, but there's really no specific feature that says, oh, if you find this, you're going to find a big buck. Because clearly the story that you were just talking about where you didn't shoot that buck, I mean, he lived in a spot where there's people everywhere.
Yeah.
And then you have guys on the other end where they're like, the only time you're going to find big mature bucks is if you're like 30 miles in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like distance is one thing. Habitat's one thing. You have seen mule deer down low. You've seen mule deer up high.
Yep.
You've seen them in open country. You've seen them in dark timber.
Mm-hmm.
There's really no like list or procedure of saying this is how you're going to kill a big one. It's really at the end of the day, you really do have to find that one buck that you want to go after, and you have to find what he's doing and figure him out in particular. And when I say figure him out, I'm talking about like in quotation marks.
Yeah.
And then you do your best, and then once you kill him, there will probably never be another mule deer that's going to act exactly like him. There might be similarities,
Yeah.
overlap of home range, but to say that he's going to behave the same exact way,
Yeah.
probably
No,
not.
Every deer has their own personality. So they're all different.
So, folks, if there's one thing that I can leave you guys with, there's no replacement for actually killing big mule deer. You kind of just have to get out there, and sometimes you got to get lucky. Sometimes you have to do some homework. There's really no do-it-all procedure that we can leave you off, but hopefully throughout the past 5 podcasts, that just with the amount of knowledge that have been thrown to both Nate and myself and everybody listening here, like hopefully it gives you guys a much better idea of how you guys can approach a hunt, whether it's a lowland desert sagebrush hunt or a high country hunt or a dark timber hunt, because it's like one thing we've learned is there's big bucks everywhere. You just got to kind of look for them.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said, Nate, if you don't have anything else, let's jump into Fast Facts and unfortunately wrap it up for the first ever series of Mule Deer March.
Yeah, I know it's a sad time.
I will
here.
say, I up to this point, I've been able to listen to the first 3, and I've really enjoyed them. So
I think we've been getting really good feedback on this,
Yeah,
and people are kind of like, we got to have this.
One of the funny things is some of the most feedback we've gotten from each week of the Mule Deer month has been from our other guests that we've had on the podcast because they are so mule deer obsessed that every little bit that they can glean about mule deer is because, like, to you or to Brock or to any of the other guys, like if we have a podcast that says 99% of stuff but then there's that 1% that you haven't heard before, it's like that's worth it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we're going to jump into something more exciting than mule deer next week, which is spring turkey.
And then it's just back to Nate and myself. So sorry, folks.
Yeah. So
unfortunately, we got no more guests lined up.
Time to hit that unsubscribe button.
Clayton, do you have a fast fact?
yeah,
Oh, you do? All right,
Yep.
we'll let you go first.
it kind of relates. I figured I brought all these shed antlers. This is something I didn't really know until I was looking this up. Okay, so my fast fact is, and I will state, I think this is primarily relating to deer sheds, probably more deer sheds, because, like, I know on the elk, that seems different, but the base of a shed antler, where the antler disconnects from the pedicle, is referred to as the seal. The size and shape of the seal can indicate the physical and nutritional condition of the deer before shedding, as well as stress levels. Shed antlers with a rounded or curved out seal indicates an animal with good nutrition, low stress, and high testosterone during the rut. Shed antlers with a flat or slightly concave seal indicates an animal with higher stress, poor nutrition, and or an injury or disease.
Interesting.
Whoa.
I've always thought that it had to do more with the maturity of the animal as they like lose more pedicle and it gets closer to the skull, which is
because like
really interesting. We were talking about this. We've got some elk sheds sitting behind the cameras here in the studio that we picked up last week. That we were looking at the pedicles earlier.
Yeah, I did notice some of them have like, because that's why I said I think primarily more on the deer. Because I've even noticed with like mature bucks, they'll still generally have like a rounded out seal.
Yeah.
But on an elk, like a lot of times I feel like elk are just flat. But I did notice even some of yours, they are slightly rounded out.
Yeah.
But that does seem kind of more like an elk thing. Like maybe the more mature they get, like they're kind of flat. But
Yeah. Super interesting.
Animals
that was from the National Deer Association anyway. So.
Well, that's
cool.
interesting. Yeah, Nate brought up a fast fact very similar, but he went off a completely different tangent. And,
Yeah.
Because his had to do with age and maturity. Yours
It had
has to do with
age and
stress.
maturity, yeah. And mine, I think, was also from the NDA. I'm almost positive, yeah.
And there could be a correlation between the two. It's probably not just one or the other. It's probably there's a factor of both.
Yeah.
You know, it would make sense. Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know. I mean, you guys are pretty in tune with sheds, so you guys pay attention to that stuff. I don't. Well, in the spirit of sheds, guess what? I knew the two people sitting next to me are shed fanatics, so I decided to go. I don't know how true this is, but I just thought it was very fascinating because I come from an Asian background, and Asians are just weird when it comes to medicinal value and stuff like that. So, with that said, in traditional Chinese history, deer antler has been used for over 2,000 years as a prominent ingredient in medicine. Specifically, young antlers, meaning antlers in the growing velvet stages. It is believed that medicinal benefits that are derived from deer antlers are the following. So, apparently, they can boost your liver and your kidney function, as well as lead to healthier blood levels. Second, helps with both male and female infertility issues. It strengthens your bone marrow. The other one is it speeds up your bone healing, enhances your metabolism, and manages your fatigue, which if you're fatigued, you recover faster. And the other one is simply used to increase blood volume and strengthen cancer patients that are weakened by cancer. And so these are actually made by two ways. So when an antler or when a deer is in growing, they either just kill a deer and butcher the deer and take the antlers, or more commonly, to be able to reuse that resource, they put the deer to sleep through anesthesia, and then they just go and cut off the velvet antlers. And when they cut it off, it's cut basically like how you would imagine a shed. It's cut right at the base. And how this is turned into medicine is it's actually the velvet that is used. So they'll strip off all the velvet, and then they'll dry it. And then when you dry the velvet, it becomes really hard. And then they'll grind that and turns into powder. It kind of becomes kind of a blur at this point, because I don't know if you put it in like water and you drink it like tea, or if you consume it dry. But then that is how you turn velvet into apparent medicine, and then that is how you consume it. Now, it is believed to have medicinal value. Is there actually medicinal value? I don't know. So don't take my word for it. I just thought it was very fascinating because, I don't know.
I had heard
Asian
about
culture.
it as like infertility and like aphrodisiac
Yeah,
type thing, but I hadn't heard of any of the others.
The website that published is actually, I believe it's a university here in the States. And so they actually went and studied this Chinese tradition, and then they came back and did their own independent study, and they're not really sure if there's actually, but they can see how it can help.
Interesting.
So that's my fast fact with velvet and whatnot.
It's really funny. I was about that close when I was coming up with like my fast fact on doing it on velvet.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Very cool. My fast fact is kind of less of a fun one, more of just informational, and it's actually is kind of a little bit of a pass on. I was listening to, for my own information and knowledge, Randy Newberg recently did a podcast with I believe it was the deputy director of ODFW, which is Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, talking about a lot of things, but one of the things, which is why I was listening to it, was for those of you who tune in at Alta, Oregon this year for Mule Deer, they completely revamped the Mule Deer game management units. They're different than elk. They're different than everything else. Mule deer have their own game management areas. And there's been a decent amount of distress over that because people have been building points in certain units, and people know the state of mule deer hunting by the unit. You know, it's kind of if you took away all the borders, and a lot of people feel like they're starting from ground zero. And so just as a little bit of information for any of those that might be interested, how they went about that is actually pretty fascinating and very research-backed. They collared 1,500 deer in the state of Oregon, and then they collared them in their winter ranges and then tracked those deer, obviously, throughout their summer ranges as they spread out, compared that to what they currently had for GMUs, and then basically hired a third-party company which uses modeling software to give them the best model of deer movement, of mule deer movement throughout the state to create these new ones. So their old one, they had deer that were collared in the same winter range, bucks that were collared in the same winter range that were reported as harvest across 9 GMUs. Cool. So a deer in one GMU deer in one GMU of winter range that were then spread out to over half a dozen GMUs. And so what they did is they created their new management units very heavily based on the migration routes. Very different than what we've been talking about today with these resident deer populations. And so that, for those of you that are wondering why they're so funky, and they have really complex, weird names, and it can honestly kind of be a turnoff going to the website now, especially if you have any history of hunting in Oregon. Yeah. Going to the website and seeing this completely revamp, and I think it's since the 60s or something. I forget what year it is, but it has been decades and decades of this current system for them to basically start from ground zero. It can be really intimidating. It can basically be like approaching a new state as far as trying to figure out tag allotment, points, all the stuff that Western hunters do. But just so that you have a little bit, hopefully, more confidence going into that process if you do decide to go forward, that it should be a major benefit to the ability for Oregon to sustainably allot tags over the next foreseeable future. And what they will do is they will hopefully now have better tracking of the winter range to summer range herds, because they should be within fairly confined borders of these new units, and it will allow them to increase and decrease those tags as harvest numbers come without kind of just throwing a blind dart at the dartboard. So there's a lot more to do than that. If you guys want more information than that, Randy Newberg did a podcast with the director, like I said, or the assistant director, deputy director of ODFW, and they cover a whole lot other things as far as like predator management and state legislation, which is a massive discussion in Oregon right now. But just as it being one of our sister states to the south that has mule deer and in the spirit of mule deer, that's kind of the cliff notes of what that completely new system is in Oregon. And
there's a lot of mule deer talk.
I don't have a huge amount of points built up or anything, but it is something like that I do really believe was done in benefit of the mule deer's population.
I truly believe that change of unit management was well intended.
Yeah, absolutely well intended.
And I fully back it.
And it's one of those things as a hunter where if that gives them the ability to say this herd is getting hit so hard that we're going to have to shut down hunting in this area for an amount of time, which they're seeing that kind of decrease in like the southeast of Oregon, down by like that Nevada border, like some herds are just getting absolutely hammered. It's something that personally as a hunter, and I believe talking to you and you, like as hunters, that we would be very supportive of knowing that it is like research-based wildlife management.
I think Oregon is doing it right, because you go northeast into Montana where they just have this blanket management system. Like their mule deer herds are struggling. I mean, they're just cutting non-resident tags like 2,000 this year. Like region 6 and 7 in Montana used to be like that's the hub for mule deer. Their numbers are way low because they don't manage that herd for that herd. They just manage the state as a blanket. Like if I got a general deer tag, I could hunt anywhere in the state. But the reason why Oregon does it is because like they're like, this is a herd and this herd has a set number of deer where we only want a certain amount of deer being taken out of this specific herd. This is how we're going to manage it. Whereas Montana, like you can have every single person and their mom hunting the one single herd in Montana and just wipe out that herd. So that's why there's big talk in Montana, but
and they're managing it. A couple of the factors that they're managing it to, the big one is buck to doe ratio.
Yes,
and that's really one of the most important ones, and it should hopefully actually give, once a couple years go by and research tools have the chance to catch up in their Oregon department, their draw odds page and everything has a chance to catch up, it should give you a much more realistic outlook to what you can expect going into some of those, especially for non-residents that don't live there, what you can expect going into these hunts, because what you expected from your points that you basically spent to get one of these tags in Oregon may have been a very poor or maybe on the lucky side, a really good representation of the hunt that you got. So
we'll find out.
Well, I think that's where a lot of the concern comes from, is like these people that have been building points, like you're going to this new system. Yeah. Now you have no idea. It's completely new. Nobody knows what's going to happen going forward. So like you have no idea how many points it's going to take to draw
it's just
these
fear
new
of
units.
the unknown. But at the end of the day, I think I don't think it's going to be as bad as people think.
Yeah, and hopefully better for the mule deer.
Clayton, I mean, people know you Beard Brothers, but in case you wanted to shout something else, we will always let our guests shout something out if you want to before we close things out.
Oh, I don't got too much. Just,
Bearded Brothers
I
Outdoors
love talking
on YouTube.
mule deer. Yeah, like you said, we just uploaded that one video.
You guys had a nice new animation as the beginning of your video.
Yeah.
I liked that a lot.
Yeah, Colton's been working on some stuff. He should, I know he's recently been working on a new elk video, so he should probably have that out here pretty soon.
Cool.
And you guys do one of those things where you kind of release videos a little bit sporadically throughout the year, not just dump them in
we're
fall.
not.
I always look forward to them.
It's a hobby.
We like making the videos and stuff, but it's not.
You do it when you have time.
Yeah. The one he's been working on that he's about done with is actually from 2024. So
Awesome.
it's a year and a half old.
Yeah. Well, with that one, folks, that's it for Mule Deer March.
That's it.
We did 5 weeks. You guys got lucky. Usually March has 4 Tuesdays, but this month or this year we had 5. So you guys got an extra episode this year. I think March is oftentimes where you really get hit with those mule deer blues, where you're just like, man, I really miss hunting. And so we kind of wanted to kind of rejuvenate some spirit into the heart of all the mule deer avid hunters out there. But next week, I mean, we're approaching April, so we're hopping right back into our normal rhythm of what's relevant to the time of year, which is turkey season. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed Mule Deer March. We've already had a lot of requests on getting a blacktail series going, but we don't have a month that starts with a B. So
people have been saying blacktail August, blacktail Bovember.
Yeah,
people really want the blacktail.
So if we get enough demand on it, but folks, we just really at the bottom of our hearts, like Nate and I, we really want to thank you guys for the support for this series. This series, the feedback has been insanely positive, and we've enjoyed it. You guys have enjoyed it. Our guests have been awesome. Yeah, and I think Clayton was a perfect closure to this podcast. So with that said,
and just with Clayton and Clayton's here right now, but all the other guys came. I mean, obviously, we've told them in person, but our massive thanks. These guys have pulled some serious strings to come. A couple of them have driven completely across the state for a day of podcasting, and just a really class group of guys, gentlemen that we've had in the podcast. So
I really appreciate you guys reaching out and asking me to come down. And
dude, it's always a pleasure to have you here.
I'll talk mule deer. I'll talk anything hunting all day long. I don't care what it is.
But with that said, folks, we appreciate you. This might be the end of Mule Deer March, but we're still keeping our same schedule. So we will see you guys next Tuesday, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Talking turkey.